On the exact day of our engagement, my fiancé, wanting to show me who's the ultimate boss around here, slapped me with an absolutely wild demand. I'm sleeping over at Quentin's house tonight. If you don't agree, then let's just hit the cancel button on this engagement. To this, I could only let out a self-deprecating chuckle. Looking back at every little detail over the years, I figured it was finally time to let myself off the hook. Since you're so absolutely obsessed with your guy bestie, then I wish you both 100 years of perfectly toxic harmony. From this moment on, I, Caspian, have absolutely zero connection with you, Valeria. After dropping that mic, I walked out of the shop without even a glance backward. Leaving the Starlight store, feeling utterly crummy, I found the nearest bar to crash at. In the past, I drank to celebrate and be happy. Growing up made me realize that drinking is literally the only way to be happy. The noise inside the bar was deafeningly chaotic. Several figures were on the stage, twisting their flexible waists like human noodles. The crowd was either enjoying the view or jumping up to join the wild hype, except for one lone figure in the corner, silently drowning himself in liquid courage, unconditional trust, always keeping each other in our hearts. I originally thought these were just the baseline requirements for love, but as it turns out, they were the impossible ceiling. At this moment, two hulking guys in black suits busted through the bar entrance. Their faces were as serious as a heart attack. Their eyes scanned the chaotic scene around them, unconsciously furrowing their brows, until they noticed the heavily intoxicated young man in the corner. Their eyes instantly lit up like light bulbs. There's no time left, he'll have to do. The miss is barely holding on. Tie him up! My drunk self didn't slowly blink awake until the next morning. My eyes were instantly greeted by a strange, overly fancy ceiling. I sat up and rubbed my throbbing balloon-like head. Weird. Wasn't I just at the bar? Where in the world is this? A cold, indifferent voice drifted over from the side. You're awake! I instinctively turned my head to look. My eyes were blessed with a pair of snow-white legs peeking out from under a skirt, rocking a killer pair of high heels. Her delicate, perfectly sculpted face carried a natural, icy aloofness. Aurelia sat on the edge of the bed, legs crossed, looking at the documents in her hand. She shot me a side-eye and asked flatly, "Am I pretty to look at?" "Pretty. Then you want to go to the Civil Affairs Bureau and get a marriage certificate with me, right?" "No." Aurelia froze for a second, and I, taking advantage of this tiny gap, had already roughly guessed what on earth went down last night. Looking at that glaring crimson smudge on the bedsheet, my heart felt a wave of absolute panic. First time getting wasted at a bar and boom, my V-card got swiped! But I couldn't remember a single pixel of what happened last night. It probably, maybe, hopefully wasn't me going wild and crazy, right? If my dear uncle found out about this, he'd definitely split me in half with a broomstick. Caspian, 25 years old, graduated from the Magic City University of Traditional Chinese Medicine, has an uncle serving as a major general in the military zone. Yesterday was supposed to be the day of your engagement, but you showed up at a bar to drink your sorrows away. Let me take a wild guess. Got into a spicy little fight with your girlfriend? Aurelia read off my identity details from the file with eerie calmness. Finally, she dropped a question. You've been with that woman for at least 5 years. Have you guys ever played the horizontal tango? No. I lowered my head, feeling a bit awkward. To be honest, it was pretty embarrassing to admit. Forget about doing the deed. After 5 years of being together, Valeria and I were still stuck at the PG-rated hand-holding stage. Hearing this, Aurelia actually let out a sigh of relief. Yesterday, someone slipped some funky juice into her drink. She barely managed to escape with the help of her bodyguards, and through a bizarre twist of fate, she ended up having a wild night with me. Fortunately, this guy was actually a pure, untouched, innocent boy. She didn't exactly have a habit of stealing other people's men, but since the cookie had already been eaten, she couldn't just let it run away. Otherwise, her pristine reputation would be completely ruined. I had just picked up my clothes from the floor and put them on under the covers, when a hand suddenly tilted my chin up. Her flawlessly beautiful face was just inches away. She spoke with an icy tone. Since it's come to this, then from now on you'll follow me. Tomorrow we go get the marriage certificate. I don't know how deeply you're obsessed with that woman, but at the very least, on the day of our engagement, I wouldn't run off to a hospital to cozy up with another man. Can I politely decline? I asked, sounding a bit weak. Are you kidding me? We literally met yesterday, and we're getting legally bound tomorrow? Anyone with a functioning brain cell would know there's something fishy here. Of course you can. Expectedly, Aurelia actually nodded her head. Then, without missing a beat, she sat back in her chair and casually added, on the condition that you can handle me going to your uncle and filing a complaint. My eyes bulged out in sheer horror. You're blackmailing me? Despicable. I'm clearly the victim here. Seeing that it was about time, Aurelia stood up and walked towards the door. Before leaving, she didn't forget to glance back at me. Her frosty face finally managed to reveal a faint, completely captivating smile. I don't want much. I just want you, the person. I expect your answer within 2 days. Once you've made up your mind, come find me at the Century Tower. Stick with this big sister. You won't lose out. After dropping that line, she turned and left. Actually, there was one sentence she kept to herself. Since the deed was already done, I would never be able to escape the palm of her hand for the rest of my life. Outside the hotel, A Rolls-Royce was parked quietly. In the driver and passenger seats sat the two hulking guys in suits. The exact same culprits who dragged my drunk self out of the bar last night. The rear car door opened, and Aurelia stepped inside. She gave a soft instruction. Give my mom a call. Tell her the son-in-law she's been begging for has been found. Tell her to stop setting me up on those annoying blind dates from now on. Until the Rolls-Royce vanished around the street corner. I, standing by the window observing, finally pulled my gaze back. I glanced at the crimson smudge on the bedsheet, and couldn't help but let out a long, dramatic sigh. Ugh, what in the world is all this? Just jumped out of the tiger's den and straight into the wolf's mouth. As I muttered, I couldn't resist giving myself a light slap. Told you not to drink that much. Getting gobbled up by someone is one thing, but having absolutely zero VIP user experience from it? This is literally losing the wife in the army too, a massive, catastrophic loss. Meanwhile, inside the luxurious Liu family mansion, Reginald glared coldly at his own daughter, finally unable to hold back his raging fury as he stood up and roared. I told you ages ago to cut off all ties with that brat from the Chen family. What on earth is going through your head? Abandoning Caspian on the exact day of your engagement. Where the heck are you putting my face and your own reputation, huh? Faced with her father's scolding, Valeria nonchalantly walked over to the sofa and sat down, spitting out the excuse she had prepared long ago. I'm doing this for the good of our family. Can't you see I'm mentally breaking Caspian down? Only by constantly lowering his backbone and bottom line, and making him feel like he absolutely cannot live without me. Will he obediently listen to my every word after we get married? If I just easily got engaged to him like that, would he even cherish me in the future? Hearing these words, Father Liu's angry expression softened just a tiny bit, but his face remained stern. It better be like you say, but let me warn you, you better keep your distance from Quentin. It was like this before, and it will strictly be like this after you get married. I know, Valeria replied, half-heartedly. In reality, she had already plotted everything out perfectly in her mind. Once she was done using me as a stepping stone, she'd go ahead and cook the raw rice into fully cooked rice with Quentin. By then, even if her parents objected, it would be utterly useless. A family of three, each plotting their own little schemes. The only thing they didn't doubt for a second was whether I'd come crawling back. The housekeeper, Mrs. Higgins, watched all this from the sidelines, sighing deeply in her heart. The authorities are baffled, but the bystanders see it all crystal clear. She understood my personality all too well. If they wanted to win me back now, it was probably way too late. Fast forward to the deadline of the 2 days Aurelia mentioned. It had finally reached the very last day. Yesterday, after leaving the couple's hotel, I went back to the old Zhang family residence to pay respects to my parents. The Zhang family was a lineage of traditional Chinese medicine doctors. When my parents were alive, they were the absolute top-tier, legendary doctors in the country. Yet they ended up dying at the hands of a patient's family member. Even now, I remember that incident vividly. When an earthquake struck Sichuan, my parents dragged me along for disaster relief. They didn't sleep a wink for 2 days and 2 nights, managing to save nearly 100 people in a painfully shabby environment. But due to a severe shortage of medical supplies, many people still passed away on the operating tables. One patient's family member completely lost their marbles, blaming all the faults entirely on my parents. Taking advantage of the moment we were leaving, they literally drove a car straight into us. In the end, in that tragic car crash, I was the only one who survived under my parents' protective embrace. They, however, were forever left behind in Sichuan. From that point on, my uncle became my one and only living relative, which is exactly why I absolutely did not want to let him down. After finishing paying my respects, I headed straight to the Liu family's villa. Since I'd made up my mind to leave, I naturally had to pack up my household register and ID documents. Today, Valeria hadn't gone to the company. She was currently sitting conflicted on the living room sofa, her eyes glued to a chat interface on her phone. She typed out a line of text but just couldn't bring herself to hit the send button. Caspian hadn't been home for 2 whole nights. We had fought before, sure, but usually I'd come running back within half a day tops. But this time, a sound came from the doorway. Mr. Caspian is back. I walked into the house with a face completely devoid of expression. Valeria sat up abruptly and looked at me, demanding answers with a forceful, bossy tone. Where were you the night before yesterday and last night? Why didn't you report your whereabouts to me? Wasn't it just me making a tiny request for our engagement? You're a grown man. Can't you be just a little bit more generous? Do you have any idea how worried I've been about you these past 2 days? Don't you think you should apologize to me first? Hearing that Valeria actually wanted me to apologize to her, I almost laughed out loud from pure anger. You run off to accompany your guy bestie on our engagement day, and now you actually want me to apologize? This is completely upside-down crazy town. Does she think she's a top-tier boss monster who can just do whatever she wants? How did I never realize before that this woman is such a total brainlet? Not wanting to waste another breath, I walked directly toward my room. Feeling given the cold shoulder, Valeria felt another surge of extreme indignation. A mere Caspian actually daring to ignore her. What right did he have to pull this kind of stunt? Valeria followed me right into my room. Only then did she realize that the room was surprisingly, almost depressingly, minimalist. Aside from the absolute necessary furniture, you basically couldn't see anything else. She had only been in here once when we first moved in together. She never imagined it was still this bare. Come to think of it, almost everything Caspian wanted, he paid for out of his own pocket. He had never once asked her for a single dime. This inevitably made Valeria think of Quentin, who casually asked her for a cool $1 million in living expenses every single month. The contrast was undeniably massive. Immediately after, she saw me pull out a suitcase from the top of the wardrobe. I opened it and started stuffing my clothes inside. She froze. What are you packing your clothes for? I've already broken up with you. Isn't moving out the most logical next step? Valeria stood frozen in her tracks like a glitched NPC. She had words screaming in her head, but they were stuck in her throat, refusing to come out. The Caspian who used to be obedient to her every whim was actually breaking up with her. How could this be happening? If they broke up, how was she supposed to continue her master plan? Only at this very moment did Valeria finally realize that things had slightly derailed from her perfect control. The blow of canceling the engagement was way bigger than she had ever imagined. Little did she know, this disappointment was an accumulation of years of putting up with her nonsense. It's just that she never bothered to notice. And even if she did, she never took it seriously. I didn't have much luggage. Exactly one suitcase was the perfect fit. After grabbing my household register, ID card, and my family's heirloom silver needles, I walked toward the door without turning my head once. Valeria, from now on we walk our separate paths. You take your high road, I'll take my low road. Goodbye forever. It wasn't until I had been gone for a long time that Valeria, standing by the door, finally snapped back to reality. This was totally not the script she had imagined in her head. She still desperately needed to rely on my uncle's power to shake off the Wu family's chokehold on her company. Now that I've just dropped the mic and bounced, what the heck is she supposed to do? Slightly panicked, Valeria hastily dialed her mother's number to beg for help. Upon learning the whole story, Beatrice didn't seem anxious at all. She remained as calm and unbothered as a cucumber. Things turning out like this is entirely your own fault, isn't it? You want the horse to run, but you don't want to feed it. Of all the days to pull a stunt, you just had to go find that guy surnamed Chen on your engagement day. I seriously have no idea what's so great about him. He just went to some random off-brand foreign school. Now look at Caspian. He studied medical skills since he was a kid and can even cure our family's hereditary headaches. Mom, can you please just tell me how to fix this mess already? Hearing her mother belittle the man she secretly liked, Valeria felt incredibly sour inside, but she also knew her mother was spitting pure facts. Still, a crush is a crush. How could an orphan like Caspian ever be worthy of her? Beatrice paused for a long moment before speaking. Don't go looking for Caspian for the next 2 days. Both of you need to cool down properly. Once you've both cooled off, considering how much he's obsessed with you, you just lower your head and apologize. Do you honestly think Caspian would reject you? Valeria paused. She hung up the phone. Right, as long as she apologized, she could definitely reel him back in. Just as she was thinking this, her phone rang again. It was Quentin calling. Valeria, I just got out of the hospital today and bought 2 chickens. I was thinking it's been a while since I treated you to my cooking. Are you free right now? I'll be right there. Tossing the whole Caspian fiasco into the recycling bin of her mind, Valeria grabbed her car keys and drove off, completely forgetting whatever her mother had just advised her. Mrs. Higgins, the housekeeper, let out another heavy sigh. Being this wishy-washy, greedily trying to keep a foot in both boats, how could she possibly retain any man's heart? Meanwhile, after leaving the Liu family, I drove straight to the Century Tower in the center of the Magic City. Today was the final day that woman had warned me about. I was terrified that if I arrived a second too late, I'd end up on tomorrow's breaking news headlines. But I suddenly remembered, I didn't even have that woman's contact info. How was I supposed to get in? However, this worry was quickly squashed, because one of the 2 hulking bodyguards was standing right at the front desk, looking like he had been waiting for me for ages. The bodyguard didn't say a single word, just turned and walked toward the elevator. I followed closely behind, curiously observing everything around me. The Century Tower belonged to the Century Group, a highly renowned enterprise in the Magic City. The entire company's market value was easily in the tens of billions. And that woman was actually a high-level executive in this mega corporation? But I quickly realized my imagination was way too basic. The bodyguard led me straight to the CEO's office door, reached out and knocked. Mr. Caspian has arrived. Come in. Aurelia, unseen for 2 days, reappeared. Only this time, she was dressed in a sharp professional business suit. She lifted her head, her eyes filled with playful mockery. I actually thought you wouldn't show up today. I was already prepping my guys to kidnap you and drag you to the Civil Affairs Bureau. You're the CEO of the Century Group? I gulped loudly. Aurelia gave a tiny nod. Then doesn't this mean the Century Group is? Aurelia nodded her head lightly again, replying with absolute calmness. It belongs to my family. Is there a problem? Of course, there's a problem. After hearing her admit it out loud, my eyes instantly widened like saucers. My attitude shifted to one of extreme determination. I'm not getting this certificate anymore. Let's never see each other again. Saying that, I turned around, desperate to sprint out of there. Are you kidding me? I originally thought Aurelia was at most a little bit rich. Getting married would mean I could eventually figure out a way to divorce. But a freaking top-tier wealthy heiress. Her looking for me definitely meant nothing good. If I got dragged into whatever messy family drama she had, fighting a divorce lawsuit alone would probably take me years. This certificate was an absolute no-go. But imagination is a beautiful thing, while reality hits like a brick. The two hulking guys stood like twin fortresses of steel, completely blocking the office door. Aurelia slowly rose from her seat and casually remarked, "If you can somehow vault over them and escape, then we won't get the certificate." Hearing this, I, standing in front of the door, took a deep breath. My gaze instantly sharpened into something incredibly fierce. Having hidden my power for over 20 years, it seemed today I had no choice but to unleash my true skills. Everyone around me only knew I was an incredible doctor. Little did they know, I also had a solid PhD in throwing hands. Half an hour later, at the Magic City Civil Affairs Bureau, the staff member stared at the bright red, fresh handprint on my right cheek, hesitated for a second, and asked, "Are you guys absolutely sure you want to take your marriage photo like this? Actually, you could just wait until the injury heals and come back." Hearing the staff member say this, the corner of my mouth twitched violently. "It's fine. I just accidentally tripped and fell. Accidentally tripped and fell. Who on earth trips and lands a perfectly shaped handprint on their own face?" Even though the staff member was internally screaming WTF, they still quickly processed the paperwork. About 10 minutes later, I walked out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, trailing behind Aurelia. Rubbing my stinging cheek, I grumbled in utter confusion. "What's the point of just getting a certificate? Do you honestly think I can pass your parents' background check? Anyone else probably couldn't, but you absolutely can." Aurelia said this with rock-solid certainty, but I had absolutely zero clue where her confidence was coming from. Was she banking entirely on my peerless, insanely handsome face? I was forced into the Rolls-Royce, knowing I had to help Aurelia survive her parents' interrogation, so she wouldn't have to be hounded about marriage anymore. As for whether she'd let me go after the deed was done, that depended entirely on her mood. It was the definition of an unfair treaty, but I literally couldn't say no. The handprint on my face was the glorious reward for my resistance. Aurelia's parents were flying back to the Magic City in a week, and for these next few days, I was forced to live together with Aurelia, under the beautiful excuse of getting to know each other better. Inside the Panlong Villa district, "Miss, why are you back so early today? This is my housekeeper, Mrs. Gable. His name is Caspian, my man." Hearing Aurelia say this, Mrs. Gable's face was painted with extreme shock. She practically watched this young miss grow up with her own eyes and knew her personality inside out. Normally, if any regular guy even breathed too close to her, she'd frown in disgust, especially those rich playboys who approached her with obvious hidden agendas. And now, she actually, "Hello, Mrs. Gable. I guess I can barely be considered her man for now." I smiled awkwardly, extending a rather stiff hand to shake Mrs. Gable's. As for why it was stiff, because my foot was currently being viciously stomped on by a certain someone. Aurelia let out a cold snort and walked into the house. What the heck did he mean by barely? Was she, the majestic eldest daughter of the Shen family, really that hard to present to the world? What a man in desperate need of some intense training. I followed them into the interior of the villa and was completely utterly mind-blown by the incredibly luxurious living room layout. Every single corner reeked of the sweet smell of hard cash. Even the bathroom was bigger than my old bedroom at the Liu family's place. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Quentin was living in a high-end, massive flat that Valeria had bought for him. Valeria sat quietly on the living room sofa, looking a bit spaced out. If Quentin had cooked for her in the past, she would have been over the moon. But now, for some inexplicable reason, she just couldn't muster any excitement. A moment later, Quentin, wearing an apron, walked out of the kitchen carrying a pot of stewed chicken. The chicken emitted a strong aroma, but the surface of the soup was covered in a thick, greasy layer of oil. This made Valeria secretly frown. Ever since she got together with Caspian, he practically handled all the cooking at home. Every dish he made used only a tiny bit of oil, and he would always add herbal ingredients that were actually good for the body. "Valeria, hurry up and taste it. See how it is." Valeria picked up a piece of chicken with her chopsticks and put it in her bowl, taking a tentative bite with polite expectation. But the taste was seriously underwhelming. Compared to the meals Caspian made, the difference was literally heaven and earth. However, facing Quentin's eagerly expectant gaze, Valeria swallowed it down anyway, smiling as she nodded. "It's very delicious." Quentin finally breathed a sigh of relief. He hadn't really stepped into a kitchen since going abroad. It seemed his culinary skills hadn't regressed after all. Or rather, he assumed she would just love anything he cooked. After dinner, the two sat shoulder to shoulder. What should have been a warm and fuzzy atmosphere actually felt somewhat suffocating due to their silence. "Valeria, why don't you just sleep over here tonight?" After a long pause, Quentin finally spoke up. He stole a glance at Valeria's snow-white legs, his eyes burning with heat. His mind was already racing wildly like a runaway train. Only by thoroughly crossing that final boundary Would this woman truly belong to him? After marriage, half of the entire Liu family's fortune would belong to him too. Thinking of this, Quentin took the initiative, one hand quietly creeping up onto Valeria's soft waist. Just as his fingers were about to slip under the hem of her skirt and enter the mysterious zone, Valeria suddenly stood up right at that second. I just remembered I still have some stuff to handle at the company. Also, I probably won't be coming over here for the next little while. My Liu family still can't afford to lose Caspian right now. Let's talk about all this after everything is fully settled. Having said her piece, she strode away, her footsteps showing not a single trace of hesitation. After she left, Quentin's face instantly darkened like a thunderstorm, mixed with a heavy, toxic dose of jealousy. He had already noticed that Valeria's attitude toward him these past 2 days was getting weirdly subtle. If he didn't pull some moves right now, things would definitely spin out of his control. That damn Caspian, why couldn't he just be a good little obedient dog? Why did he have to stir up all this annoying drama? Since it's come to this, then don't blame me for getting my hands dirty. Early the next morning, Valeria arrived at the company as usual. She had barely walked into her office when someone followed right on her heels. Valeria, I heard you and Caspian broke up. Is it true? It was Clementine, Valeria's best friend from university, now a senior vice president at the group. In public, they maintained a strict boss-subordinate relationship, but behind closed doors, they were purely besties. Walking behind her desk to sit down, Valeria turned on her computer and replied flatly, "Just a tiny little disagreement. Give it a bit of time and he'll obediently come crawling back." The three of them had known each other since university. I used to deliver food to Valeria every single day, and even Clementine got to mooch off my cooking. She and I actually had a pretty decent relationship. Because of that, she could see through the dynamic between the two of us much clearer. Her expression wavered for a second, then she spoke up. "Honestly, I think you really messed up big time this time. Hanging out a bit too close to Quentin normally is one thing, but doing it on your actual engagement day and skipping the banquet for him? How is that any different from throwing Caspian's dignity on the floor and stomping on it? I precisely wanted to crush his dignity, to make him utterly obedient to me. Anyway, he loves me, doesn't he?" Valeria had an insanely domineering personality. Because of this, she absolutely refused to let anyone go against her ideas. She knew my family background crystal clear, and she knew how desperately a guy who lost both parents as a kid craved a family. He was a man with very low desires, which is exactly why he was so stubbornly clinging to this critical juncture. Seeing that he was finally about to marry her, there was no way Caspian would give up right now. Clementine wasn't blind to this logic either, but people have something called dignity. Even if it's a dog, you still have to throw it a bone for it to keep sticking around you. If you just kick it and beat it all day, eventually, it'll just run away on its own, not to mention a highly intelligent human being. But she knew deep down that with Valeria's stubbornness, even if she spoke these words out loud, Valeria wouldn't listen. It would just sour their relationship. So, she sighed and changed the subject. "Yesterday, Quentin's manager came to me asking for slots at the Deep Blue concert. There are 20 slots in total. The invited singers take up 5, leaving exactly 15 slots. Hearing this, Valeria replied without a second thought, "Give him 1 slot, and make sure he's scheduled for the grand finale. For Quentin, this is a golden opportunity to skyrocket his fame." This statement completely electrocuted Clementine. Her eyes went wide. "Give it to him? His singing skills are literally worse than mine. Putting him on stage, aren't you just setting him up to be a total laughingstock? And worse, if he bombs, all our hard work over this period will completely flush down the drain. So what if he sings badly? Just have him pre-record the songs in a studio and auto-tune the heck out of it. When the actual concert happens, just play the pre-recorded track. All he has to do is act the part." Clementine was instantly rendered speechless. She had absolutely zero counter-arguments. Doing it this way could work, but it was massively unfair to everyone else. "Valeria, ever since Quentin showed up, you've completely changed." Clementine turned away helplessly and walked out of the office. There was one more thing she kept to herself. One day, Valeria would regret this. For the sake of a guy she used to have a crush on, she was throwing away a boy whose eyes held nothing but her. But she failed to realize that people change, especially after so many years. Panlong Villa District. Villa number 1. Aurelia walked downstairs, yawning widely. She was still wearing just a flimsy slip dress, completely forgetting that there was a fully grown man living in the house. I, who was in the living room currently mixing herbal bath ingredients, was instantly stunned stupid. Those silky, snow-white legs and that half-exposed cleavage. Once my brain rebooted, I whipped my head away, my face and ears burning red. I stuttered in complete embarrassment. "You. Why did you come down dressed like that? What's the big deal? It's not like you didn't see everything that night. You even touched me. You were so aggressive then. Why are you acting all shy now?" Aurelia sauntered downstairs without a care in the world. She pinched a bit of the herbal mixture on the table with her fingers and asked curiously, "Are you sick? Do you need to take medicine?" I shot back grumpily, "You're the one who's sick. These are herbs for a medicinal bath. Soaking in it is super good for the body. The Shen household definitely wouldn't have this stuff. So I specifically woke up super early, to buy it from an old friend. I basically soak in it once a day. Medicine is always a third-part poison, so I control the dosage perfectly. Only by sticking to it day after day will you see the magic happen. Plus, it works wonders for the skin. This prescription is my very own exclusive secret formula. Carrying the freshly mixed materials, I headed upstairs toward my room. Aurelia curiously tagged along right behind me. The bathtub was already filled with hot water, steam billowing up. As the packet of ingredients was tossed in, the water in the tub visibly started turning murky, eventually turning a bizarre, creepy red. It honestly looked a bit terrifying. In the past, I had thought about letting Valeria soak in it too. Unfortunately, she thought the bathwater looked too gross and dirty and absolutely refused. I side-eyed Aurelia, who was still lingering nearby, and said flatly, "What are you still hanging around here for? Are you planning to watch me take a bath?" Aurelia replied in a deadpan tone, "You get out! I'm soaking first." I was dumbfounded. "On what grounds? I made this bath." Seeing her unbothered expression, a very bad feeling started bubbling up in my gut. "Don't tell me." Sure enough, the very next second Aurelia spoke in a tone that allowed zero arguments. "This entire villa is mine. Everything inside naturally belongs to me too, including you. Your stuff is essentially my stuff, now get out. I'm taking a bath." Half an hour later, Aurelia emerged from the bathroom. Her snow-white cheeks were slightly flushed from the heat. The skin on her arms felt noticeably smoother and softer. The effects of this medicinal bath totally rivaled top-tier skincare products, and best of all, zero side effects. She cast a very satisfied glance at me, who was sitting on the sofa radiating pure resentment. "Good job, little eunuch Caspian. I really didn't expect you to have such awesome skills. From now on, you will prepare a portion of this bath material for me every single day." You're welcome, my foot." I had never met a person with skin this unbelievably thick. 3 days flew by. The Deep Blue concert organized by Genesis Entertainment kicked off right on schedule. This concert had basically drained all of Genesis Entertainment's liquid funds. The stage was built in a massive stadium in the Magic City. Start time was 5 p.m. in the evening, and right now, the stadium was already packed wall-to-wall with people. Most of them came for the famous singers Genesis had booked. The concert proceeded exactly according to the master plan, until it was Quentin's turn to hit the stage. Dressed in a wildly expensive custom swimsuit, he walked up. Looking at the ocean of people below, his face flushed with excitement. He felt a massive surge of adrenaline. Watching him step onto the stage, Clementine curled her lip in disgust. To auto-tune the song he was singing, the sound engineer had worked like a dog for a whole day and night. She just prayed to the heavens nothing went wrong. Otherwise, all their hard work would be flushed down the toilet. Just as she was thinking this, Quentin, holding the microphone, opened his mouth, but no sound came out of his actual mouth. Instead, a heavily edited voice started blasting from a small device clipped to his chest. "You're still sitting by the childhood bonfire, seeing the moon in the sky, looking exactly the same. The Big Dipper points toward your future. Even in the dark, you will never lose your way." The audience down below looked up slightly, feeling a bit surprised. "Who is this singer? It actually sounds pretty good, Quentin. How come I've never heard this name before?" "Quiet down, everyone. Focus up, it's getting to the most important chorus part." As everyone knows, when performing, singers usually do some flashy moves to catch the audience's eye. Quentin confidently tossed the microphone into the air, caught it smoothly, closed his eyes, and began passionately lip-syncing. "You said you can't remember the dialogue you wanted in your past dreams. You said you can't see the stars lighting up your fairy tale in the sky. In a flash, the stars shift, and you hack through the thorns in the dark night. You hear voices discussing your past." The chorus part was about 20-something seconds long. Before Quentin even finished singing it, the Bluetooth earpiece he was wearing suddenly erupted with Clementine's voice, cursing so hard it could peel paint. "You absolute potato head! You're holding the freaking microphone upside down!" Only then did Quentin finally realize what a massive clown he was being. He hastily flipped the mic right side up and went right back to passionately singing. But did he think the audience was stupid? How could they not realize exactly what just happened? Instantly, angry shouts erupted from the crowd. "What the actual heck? Tickets were over $700, and you dare serve me a lip-syncing clown show? I was wondering why I'd never heard of this guy. I thought he was some rising star. Turns out he's just a lip-syncing fraud. Refund my money, right now." Someone had perfectly captured the exact moment on video. Those with fast fingers had already uploaded it to the internet. What was supposed to be a perfectly fine concert right at the very end exploded into a catastrophic PR nightmare. Those in the know understood it was just this one guy lip-syncing. Those who didn't know assumed the entire concert was faked, and thus the massive riot began. Backstage, Valeria had just heard the whole rundown of what happened. Her face was insanely ugly. Clementine walked in from outside at that exact moment, fuming with rage. "I told you from the start we shouldn't have given him this slot. I knew he was unreliable, but I didn't know he was this incredibly useless. Now everyone outside is screaming for ticket refunds. What do? We absolutely cannot refund the tickets. That's where the bulk of our profit comes from. If we refund everything, It means not only did we not make a single dime from this concert, we'd actually lose tens of millions. Valeria tried to manage the crisis calmly, go out immediately and pacify the audience. Tell them, it was because Quentin's vocal cords had a sudden medical emergency, so he was forced to lip sync. Once his voice heals, he will prove his innocence himself. As compensation, we can refund 1/5 of the ticket price. Although Clementine was furious, she knew this wasn't the time to throw a tantrum. She quickly turned and bolted out of the office to handle the crowd. Both of them knew crystal clear. After this, Genesis Entertainment was definitely going to be famous in the industry. Famous for all the wrong reasons. It wasn't until the second day that the chaos finally simmered down a bit. Valeria dragged her exhausted self back home. She opened the door only to find her father sitting on the sofa with a face as green as a goblin. He obviously already knew about last night's disaster. Reginald's eyes were filled with profound disappointment. He didn't hold back his scolding at all. Look at what brilliant masterpiece you've cooked up this time. This concert absorbed the entire group's resources, and you end up creating this massive, ridiculous joke. Do you have any idea how many shareholders came crying to me first thing this morning? They're demanding to strip you of your CEO position. Valeria opened her mouth but had absolutely zero defense. She didn't know what was going on lately. Ever since Caspian left, it felt like every single thing was going spectacularly wrong. Quentin wasn't as amazing as she had built him up to be in her head either. And now she couldn't even get a moment of peace in her own home. Right at that moment, Reginald suddenly grabbed his head, collapsing onto the floor in sheer agony. Terrified, Valeria rushed over to support him. She knew his hereditary headache was acting up again. In a blind panic, she quickly whipped out her phone and dialed my number. The phone rang twice and connected, my familiar voice filtering through. Caspian, my dad's headache is acting up again. Hurry up and get over here. The other end of the line was dead silent for a long moment, before my perfectly calm voice finally replied. Oh, and what does that have to do with me? I'm not your family's personal nanny, and I'm definitely not your doctor. If you're sick, go to a hospital. If they can't cure it, start picking out a nice coffin. With that, the call hung up. Valeria stood frozen in place, gripping her phone. She never expected Caspian would actually talk to her like that. Wasn't it just a little spat about the engagement? If you look at it from another angle, was he really completely blameless? Why was he being so utterly heartless? She truly never realized Caspian was such a petty, narrow-minded guy. How could a guy like that ever be worthy of her? It's just a headache. Worst case scenario, I'll just throw more money at it. You really think you're the only doctor on the planet who can cure it? I hung up the phone. Aurelia, who was sitting next to me eating potato chips and watching TV, asked, Ex-girlfriend? Yeah, give me her phone number and block her. I strictly forbid you from having even a shred of connection with her. You are my person now. Understood. Although I desperately wanted to complain, I still obediently deleted all of Valeria's contact info. I honestly just forgot to delete it earlier. I couldn't help but side-eye Miss Shen, who was still happily munching on her chips, and asked out of curiosity, Aren't you the CEO of the group? Shouldn't you be super busy with work? Don't you have to go to the company? There are naturally people to manage the company for me. The most important skill of being a superior leader is knowing how to command others. If I'm busy with work all day and can't even rest, what's the point of being a boss? I'm thirsty. Go pour me a glass of water. Seeing this woman bossing me around with such righteous entitlement, my face was covered in invisible black lines. I felt like I'd literally become a male nanny. I refused to spoil her. Folding my arms, I let out a cold snort. If you want water, go get it yourself. Did your legs fall off? Someone come in! Aurelia yelled toward the outside of the room. Immediately, 2 burly figures stomped inside. Miss, what are your orders? Without a millisecond of hesitation, I stood up and marched straight to the water dispenser by the TV. I grabbed a disposable cup and filled it with water. Then I trotted right back to Aurelia, plastered on an incredibly flattering smile, and said, Miss, please have some water. Let me clarify right now, I wasn't being a coward. I was just being exceptionally adaptable to my circumstances. Exactly. The two have absolutely nothing to do with each other. I was just a little intimidated. What do you mean, miss? You should be calling me wifey. Aurelia gave a light humph and took the cup. Waving her hand to dismiss the 2 bodyguards, my phone suddenly rang again. Seeing the caller ID, my face drastically changed. I made a shush gesture toward Aurelia, then answered the phone, speaking with extreme caution. Uncle. A deep, robust, and powerful voice boomed from the other end. Took you long enough to pick up the phone. What the heck are you doing, boy? The caller was none other than my dear uncle, General Gideon. Holding the phone, I let out an awkward laugh. Nothing much. Just washing vegetables. Just dried my hands. By the way, uncle, why did you call? Usually my uncle called exactly once a month. He had already called at the beginning of the month. It had barely been a week and he was calling again. Obviously, something was up. General Gideon's deep voice came through. I've officially retired and will be heading to the Magic City the day after tomorrow to take the position of Chief of Police. 2 old buddies of mine will be coming with me. Their bodies have some lingering issues. Get yourself prepared. If they have health issues, shouldn't they go to a hospital? Stop playing dumb with me. The other end let out an annoyed snort. Don't think I don't know you've been hiding your skills. Secretly practicing the Zhang family's 9 needles technique all this time, you little punk, trying to play me. Alright, that's it. We'll talk more in a couple of days. I put down the phone with a defeated sigh. The Zhang family's 9 needles was my family's heirloom acupuncture manual. My parents became famous across China entirely because of this manual, and I was forced to practice it since I was in diapers. But publicly, I never practiced medicine. I just didn't want to attract annoying trouble. An innocent man gets in trouble strictly because of the treasure he holds, you know? Just as one call ended, another one immediately came through. Holy guacamole! Why are there so many phone calls today? Resigned, I answered it, pressing the phone to my ear. An urgent voice came from the other side. Caspian, where are you right now? Just landed a massive gig. A cool 1 million in payment. The guy calling was named Bart. He was my designated contact person, Croker. After graduating from university, I never actually got a proper job. But everything in life requires cash. So, I'd secretly take on some business on the side. And no, definitely not selling my body. I diagnosed and treated bizarre, difficult illnesses for people. I got to know Bart through a totally random accident. Later, he became my exclusive middleman. If anyone wanted me to cure them, they had to go through Bart to find me. Over time, I actually built up quite a formidable reputation in the underground medical scene. I have to head out for a bit. Don't wait up for me for lunch. After tossing out a quick goodbye, I got up and left the house. Mrs. Gable, who had just gone grocery shopping, happened to be driving back in a BMW. She watched my retreat Mercedes-Benz, walked into the villa, and asked in confusion, "Miss, why did Mr. Caspian leave? He has some business." Aurelia casually threw out a reply. Then she mysteriously waved Mrs. Gable over. Once she was close enough, Aurelia whispered, "Mrs. Gable, do you know how to date?" Mrs. Gable had already heard about what happened 2 days ago through the bodyguards. Coupled with this sudden question, she was instantly floored. "Miss, you don't mean it didn't make any sense?" Based on her understanding of the miss, she didn't seem like the type to fall in love after just one accidental night. At the very least, she usually needed to understand a person's personality first. Aurelia muttered a few words softly into her ear. Mrs. Gable suddenly had a massive moment of enlightenment. "So that's how it is. I was wondering why you, miss, who are always so cold to outsiders, would treat Mr. Caspian so uniquely." "Gable, hurry up and tell me how to date already." Aurelia grabbed Mrs. Gable's arm and shook it like a maraca. To outsiders, she was used to showing her icy, untouchable side. But to her own people, it was a totally different story, especially to Mrs. Gable, who practically watched her grow up. She had always viewed her as a beloved elder. Mrs. Gable chuckled and stopped her shaking. She thought for a moment, then imparted her wisdom with absolute seriousness. "Miss, as the old saying goes, a man chasing a woman is like crossing a mountain, but a woman chasing a man is like poking through a piece of paper. If you want to completely capture Mr. Caspian, you have to take the proactive offensive. Otherwise, a man as excellent as Mr. Caspian, if you just keep dragging things out, be careful, someone else might snatch him right up." Then exactly what should I do? Aurelia furrowed her brows tightly. She literally had zero clues. Her dating experience was a big fat zero. Otherwise, she wouldn't be asking Mrs. Gable. Honestly, her preferred method was to just tie him up. If he refused to date her, she'd just smack him in the face. Keep doing it until he finally agreed. After all, she heard someone say once that some men actually get super excited when treated like that. And honestly, that is true. For example, the guy staring at the screen reading this right now. Well, that's simple. Mrs. Gable lowered her voice and chuckled. "Miss, haven't you already done that deed with Mr. Caspian? Then why are you guys still sleeping in separate rooms? Even if you just put 2 beds in the same room, after a while Mr. Caspian will naturally get used to it." A look of profound enlightenment washed over Aurelia's face. Meanwhile, on my end, I had already followed Bart into a private hospital. Bart was a middle-aged guy who wore glasses. As we walked down the corridor toward the inpatient department, Bart was debriefing me on the situation. "This fat sheep is going to be a tough one to crack. Seems like a hereditary headache. Nobody knows what the root cause is. They've gone to tons of hospitals and nothing worked. Spent a fortune getting in touch with me to find you." "A headache?" Walking behind him, my face instantly contorted into a weird expression. I couldn't help but think of the phone call Valeria made this morning. The world is huge. It couldn't possibly be that coincidental, right? "We're here. This is the room." In front of a wildly luxurious VIP suite, Bart finally stopped walking. He stepped forward and pushed open the ward door. Someone was lying on the hospital bed with 3 other people standing around it. Hearing the noise, they all turned their heads toward the door in a mix of surprise and hope. Seeing me walk into the room, Valeria froze. Her face instantly collapsed as she said through gritted teeth, "Caspian, what are you doing here? I told you I don't need you anymore." Hearing this, Bart, functioning as the middleman, looked confused. "What? You guys know each other?" I said flatly. "This is the ex-girlfriend I told you about." Never thought it would be this coincidental. Hearing our exchange and piecing it together with my family background, how could Valeria not realize what was happening? She gasped in absolute shock. "You're the rumored Mr. Ghost Needle." Beatrice and Cedric were equally flabbergasted. They all thought I was just some average university kid. At most, I possessed some superficial medical knowledge, and was just lucky to have a major general for an uncle. Who would have thought? Just then Reginald, looking incredibly frail on the bed, started coughing violently again. Beatrice panicked. She quickly looked at me and pleaded, "Caspian, hurry up and take a look at your dad. He just had another headache attack and now he's like this." "Ma'am, please watch your words." I stood at the door with my hands behind my back, my tone icy, calm. "Valeria and I have absolutely zero ties anymore. I'm here strictly for the paycheck. Plus, I know exactly what's wrong with the uncle here, Bart," I called out. Bart obviously knew exactly what I meant. He happily stepped forward, rubbed his hands together and grinned. "Miss Liu, our rule is you pay half up front before we even look at the patient. Of course, if there are no results, we offer a 100% full refund." Valeria's eyes bugged out. Now that she knew this so-called ghost needle was actually Caspian, how could she possibly bear to hand over the cash? She lost a massive chunk of money on that concert disaster. She even had to inject her own personal funds to cover the bleeding. 1 million was absolutely not a small number for her right now. "Caspian, are you seriously going to be this heartless? You won't even give us the slightest bit of face? As long as you cure my dad, I'll get back together with you right this second. We'll hold the engagement ceremony tomorrow. I'm totally serious this time. I'm not joking around with you." After dropping that line, Valeria felt a massive wave of confidence. If she took the initiative to lower her head, the old me would have definitely agreed with a dopey grin. But right now, I was looking at her like she was a complete and utter idiot. "Miss Liu, there is absolutely nothing between us anymore. If you refuse to pay the fee, then please go hire someone else. But I have to warn you, with your father's current condition, if you don't figure out a solution soon, I'm afraid he doesn't have much time left." "Caspian, you dare curse my dad?" Cedric, with his explosive temper, couldn't hold it back anymore. He immediately launched a flying kick straight at me. In the nick of time, a massive hand effortlessly shoved me and Bart out of the way. Then, an equally brutal kick was launched in return. All we heard was a pathetic, agonizing scream. When everyone snapped back to reality, they saw Cedric clutching his stomach, rolling on the floor in pure pain, and right in front of me stood a hulking giant. It was none other than one of the bodyguards who followed Aurelia around. "Brutus!" I gasped in surprise. "What are you doing here? Were you stalking me?" Brutus retracted his leg, standing there like an unshakable fortress of steel. He stated completely emotionlessly, "The miss ordered me to follow you. If you dared to try and run away, I was instructed to tie you up and drag you back." Bart had an incredible eye for talent. He instantly realized this giant was a total beast in a fight. Coupled with the word miss, he leaned close to my ear and whispered excitedly, "Holy guacamole, little Caspian, since when did you bag a sugar mommy? Nice going, man. How could you not tell me about such awesome news? From now on, this older bro is sticking with you. When you strike it rich, don't forget about me." "Cedric." Beatrice and Valeria quickly rushed over to check on Cedric's condition. The spot where he was kicked was already turning a nasty shade of purple-black. It was obvious how absolutely brutal the force of that kick was. Facing Beatrice's venomous glare, I simply said, "He brought that entirely upon himself. Don't blame anyone else." At this point, Bart also chimed in impatiently. "Hey, are you guys going to pay for the treatment or not? Our Caspian is a very busy man. If you can't afford the upfront fee, we're bouncing. And the middleman fee is non-refundable, by the way." Valeria forcibly swallowed the boiling rage in her chest. Gritting her teeth, she spat out, "Treat him!" She pulled out her phone. Moments later, Bart's phone dinged with a bank receipt notification text. He instantly bloomed like a happy little flower. The rule between him and me was a 20-80 split. He could easily pocket 200 grand from this cool million. Since the cash was secured, I didn't waste another breath with nonsense. I got straight to the point. "Both your father's headache and your own are actually qi deficiency headaches. But because it involves the nerves, modern medical instruments can't detect it at all. This kind of condition cannot be completely permanently cured. However, through consistent physical exercise, paired with some medicinal soups, the pain can be severely mitigated." Bart expertly pulled out a pen and paper from his jacket. I slapped the paper flat against the wall and started scribbling down a prescription. Actually, it was just a standard headache prescription. I just threw in some angelica root, prepared romania, fleece flower root, and other herbs. After handing the prescription over to Valeria, I stepped forward and started massaging the head of Reginald, who was still lying on the bed. It wasn't because I suddenly grew a massive conscience. Mostly because if I didn't actually do something physical, taking that 1 million felt a bit too much like daylight robbery. Any TCM doctor worth their salt out on the streets could easily diagnose the root cause of this family's headaches. Unfortunately, this family worshipped Western medicine exclusively and thought traditional Chinese medicine was pure voodoo. And since Western medicine relies completely on machines, they could never find the root cause. After massaging for a few minutes, the agonizing pain on Father Lou's face noticeably relaxed. "All right, from now on, just make sure he sticks to exercising. I'll be taking my leave." Not wanting to stay a single second longer than necessary, I turned around and left the ward alongside Bart and Brutus. Beatrice was completely shell-shocked. After a long silence, she finally muttered in a daze, Mother of pearl, from the moment he walked into the room to the moment he left. It hasn't even been 20 minutes, right? And he just scooped up $1 million just like that? This whole sequence of events absolutely electrocuted the 3 members of the Liu family. They had always thought he was just a somewhat useful, broke college kid. Who would have ever guessed he was literally a medical god, making $1 million per house call? Then wouldn't his bank account easily have tens or hundreds of millions? They had literally thrown away a golden goose. Comparing him to Quentin, the absolute clown who managed to hold a microphone upside down at a concert, Valeria felt a massive, painful drop in her heart. However, she quickly rallied her spirits. So what if his medical skills were amazing? At the end of the day, he was still just providing a service to others. Compared to her, they were still clouds and mud. He just wanted to flex on her to win back some face today. What a childish mentality. Give it some time, and he'll still obediently come crawling back to her. What good are medical skills if you don't know how to run a business? Does he seriously think he can easily find another sugar mommy willing to fund him? Meanwhile, I had just walked out of the hospital, planning to go grab a drink with Bart, when suddenly, Brutus hoisted me over his shoulder and started marching toward the parking lot. Hey, what the heck are you doing? It's lunchtime. The miss ordered me to bring you back to eat. Can't she just eat by herself? Why the heck does she have to drag me into it? You're in charge of cooking. Oh, perfect, just perfect. So I've officially been demoted to the personal royal chef, huh? Having eaten and drank my fill, I let out a very satisfied burp. Mrs. Gable smiled as she gathered the dishes and headed to the kitchen. Aurelia lightly kicked my leg, her tone laced with a hint of laziness. Go upstairs and fetch my shoes. We're going to the mall. Big sister, it is literally the middle of summer. Laying at home blasting the AC is peak happiness. Hearing my brilliant logic, Aurelia raised an eyebrow. My parents are flying back to the Magic City the day after tomorrow. Are you absolutely certain you want to meet them wearing those rags? What do you mean rags? I spent a whopping $100 on these bad boys. I glared at her in sheer dissatisfaction, looking completely unconvinced. To which Aurelia simply dropped a nuke. A $100 isn't rags? My cheapest skirt starts at $10K. Deafening silence. I had absolutely zero comeback for that. Left with no choice, I obediently trudged upstairs to fetch her shoes. Coming back downstairs, I tossed the shoes on the floor in front of the sofa. I curled my lip. Here, the shoes you wanted. Hubby, aren't you going to put them on for me? Aurelia sat motionless on the sofa. She merely lifted her delicate snow-white foot, blinking at me with innocent doe eyes. This instantly sent a tidal wave crashing through my heart. Mother of pearl, isn't she literally just trying to seduce me? For the sake of that glorious hubby title, I squatted down obediently and cupped her lifted foot. Once the shoes were on, the two of us finally left the villa, setting off toward the mall. 15 minutes later, the Rolls-Royce parked smoothly in front of the Century Mall. Aurelia extended a hand toward me. I raised an eyebrow in confusion. What? Your current identity is my husband. Don't you think you should be holding my hand? What kind of garbage rule is that? Can I choose not to hold it? Do you want to eat a slap? The corner of my mouth twitched violently. I had no choice but to take her fair, delicate little hand. Suppressing the wild galloping of my heart, we walked side by side into the mall. I kept repeating a mantra in my head, Caspian. Absolutely do not catch feelings. You guys only got this certificate as a business deal. Once the play is over, you fly your separate ways. This woman is incredibly unreasonable. You absolutely cannot fall into her trap. Little did I know, from the exact moment my background was investigated, I was already completely unable to escape. Run? Heh, I'd break my own legs first. Honestly, even though I seemingly make a ton of cash treating patients, unfortunately I have an uncle who loves to borrow money, which meant that after all these years, I didn't even have $1 million in savings. Because of this, whenever I bought things, I was as cheap as humanly possible. I rarely ever stepped foot into high-end malls. Watching me look around like a curious toddler, Aurelia sighed helplessly and dragged me onto the elevator heading to the 3rd floor. Any clothing store that could secure a spot in the Century Mall was definitely an international luxury brand. Walking into a custom tailoring shop, the saleswoman immediately recognized Aurelia. Seeing her, she quickly rushed over with fiery enthusiasm. Miss Shen, welcome! We actually just finished designing a new dress yesterday. Would you like to take a look? Aurelia shook her head. She pointed a finger at the curious toddler standing behind her and said flatly, pick out 2 suitable outfits for him and custom tailor 2 suits. Use the absolute best materials for everything. No need to spend that much. Just the normal stuff is fine. I quickly interjected, only to be hit with a lethal glare from Aurelia. I was instantly too terrified to open my mouth again. This bad woman is so ridiculously bossy. But what do I do? My heart is actually fluttering a little. Valeria had bought me clothes before too. Yeah, once, in 5 whole years. And that one time was only because I got completely soaked in the rain while delivering food to her. So Valeria dragged me to buy a change of clothes. Comparing the two of them, looking at Aurelia suddenly became 100 times more pleasing to the eye. My brain must have been seriously short-circuiting back then to simp for Valeria. I have no idea what was going through my head. Is this the legendary love makes you clinically brain-dead phenomenon? Soon the saleswoman, brought over 2 sets of men's clothes. They were in a grayish tone, looking incredibly premium, infinitely better than the rags I was currently wearing. After I went into the fitting room and changed, even Aurelia's eyes lit up. She stepped forward, pulled me into a hug, and took a deep, aggressive sniff. My masculine scent mixed with a faint herbal aroma, smelling exceptionally soothing. Meanwhile, on the other side of the mall, Clementine was in a terrible mood because of the botched concert. She didn't even go to work today, choosing to wander the mall all by herself. Picking out and trying on pretty clothes was her designated stress relief method. After wandering for a while, her mood did indeed improve quite a bit. She decided that when she went to work tomorrow, she absolutely had to sit her bestie down for a serious talk. She had to convince her to dump Quentin, that massive walking disaster. He was utterly useless and only created chaos. Keeping him in the company was literally keeping a ticking time bomb. Sooner or later, he would single-handedly bankrupt the entire group. Just as she was thinking this, Clementine walked past a clothing boutique. She casually glanced inside. Her forward-moving footsteps instantly slammed on the brakes. Whatever she saw made her jaw drop open. Isn't that Caspian? Who is that woman he's hugging? He found a new girlfriend this fast. Inside the boutique, I had just finished trying on the clothes. Snapping back to reality, I quickly pushed Aurelia away, looking at her with high alert. You creep! I know I'm incredibly handsome, but we are out in public. Aren't you being way too bold? Before Aurelia could even speak, a voice bursting with surprise rang out from the store entrance. Caspian. Clementine walked in. She greeted me with familiar friendliness, but actually grabbed my arm and asked in a hushed whisper, Hey! What's the deal with this woman? You've barely been broken up with Valeria for a few days and you already found a replacement. Clementine knew full well that Valeria was still thinking about me, but what she didn't know was that Valeria actually just wanted to exploit my network of connections. I am his wife. Who are you? The one who spoke up was Aurelia. She stared coldly at Clementine, grabbing my arm. Those icy eyes felt like they were hiding daggers that made a person's soul shiver. That aura of absolute dominance cultivated since childhood was unleashed without holding back a single drop. The temperature inside the store felt like it dropped several degrees. Terrified, Clementine subconsciously let go of my arm. She hastily tried to explain, please don't misunderstand. I'm Caspian's college classmate. I just saw him and came over to say hi. Aurelia couldn't really say much else. She just grumpily yanked me over to her side, cursing internally. This stinky man is in desperate need of training. Any random woman can just waltz up and grab his arm. He has absolutely zero self-awareness of being her man. I originally wanted to introduce Aurelia to Clementine as my girlfriend, but the little hand gripping my waist suddenly executed a flawless 360-degree twist. The searing pain made me change my tune instantly. This is my wife. Hearing this, Clementine's jaw practically unhinged. What? Wife? You just broke up with Valeria less than a week ago and you're married. Is there anyone on earth who operates with this kind of terrifying efficiency? She had assumed it was just a typical couple's spat. Never in her wildest dreams did she imagine I already had a literal wife. If Valeria found out about this, what would she do? Right now, Clementine just desperately wanted to sprint back and tell her bestie the news immediately. She quickly made up an excuse and bolted. After Clementine left, Aurelia aggressively smacked me right on the butt with a loud thwack. I was furious. I glared at her. Why did you hit me? You deserve to be hit. Seeing Aurelia looking so ridiculously self-righteous, my temper couldn't hold back anymore. I immediately started cracking my knuckles. Even if you're a woman, don't think your grandpa Caspian will go easy on you. If you apologize to me right now, I might just spare your life. Two saleswomen were hiding behind the counter, whispering to each other. Oh my gosh, Miss Shen's boyfriend is so manly. I thought our young miss would prefer those soft little puppy types. For sure, but if I remember correctly, those two bodyguards mentioned that Miss Shen won the National Martial Arts Championship in college. Then she focused entirely on her career. This handsome guy sounds so confident. He must have some serious skills too. Even though they were whispering softly, the store was incredibly quiet right now. I heard their conversation loud and clear. The corner of my mouth twitched so hard it almost cramped. I looked at Aurelia standing in front of me, whose face had already turned dangerously dark. National Martial Arts Champion? That's probably a bootleg title, right? I didn't hesitate for a single second. With eyes full of pure terror, I spun around and bolted toward the store exit like my life depended on it. Are you kidding me? With my scrawny little frame, I can handle normal people at best. If this crazy lady is a national martial arts champion, she could literally pin me to the floor and mop the tiles with my face using one foot. Of the 36 stratagems, fleeing is best. Run away. Aurelia, with a face as black as thunder, pulled out her phone and called her bodyguards. Tie that man up for me, and prepare a beating stick for this miss. Meanwhile, Clementine had raced back to the company at light speed. Valeria, bad news. I just ran into Caspian at the mall. He had a woman with him. He said she's his wife. Valeria rejected the idea without a second thought. Wife? Impossible. He's been with me for so many years. I know his personality flawlessly. In internet slang terms, he is the ultimate simp. We're only fighting right now because he made me lose face at the engagement ceremony. It won't be long before his anger fades and he obediently comes crawling back. Ugh, I'm serious. If you don't believe me, look, I even have a picture of them hugging. Clementine knew she wouldn't believe her, so she secretly snapped a photo while at the mall. Valeria froze, looking at the familiar face in the picture and the woman beside him who was undeniably prettier and had way more aura than she did. Her chest tightened painfully. Caspian, I thought you actually loved me. Turns out you were secretly fooling around with another woman behind my back all along. I'm such a massive joke. Standing next to her, even Clementine had to suppress the urge to roast her internally. You don't exactly have the right to say that, do you? You had a boyfriend and still ran over to a male celebrity's house every other day, but she didn't dare say it out loud. Even though this bestie had completely lost the plot when it came to romance, she was still pretty good to her. Valeria reached out her hand toward Clementine. Give me your phone. I'm calling Caspian. He blocked me. Left with no choice, Clementine handed her phone over. She couldn't help but say, Valeria, don't you think things are fine the way they are right now? Let's just stop bothering them. Caspian has a family now, and you get to be with Quentin. Isn't that a win-win for everyone? But how could Valeria possibly just let it go like that? The concert was a catastrophic failure. Countless shareholders were trying to impeach Her and replace the CEO with one of their own. Moreover, the Wu family's Longteng group was becoming increasingly brazen in cutting off Genesis Entertainment's resources. She desperately needed to borrow power to survive, and my uncle was exactly that power. But now that I was completely out of her control, she had no choice but to cash in on that one specific favor she had never touched before. After all, it was a life-saving grace. However, the phone rang for a very long time, and no one ever picked up. In a deserted clearing in the suburbs of the Magic City, I was tied up like a Christmas ham and tossed into a dirt pit. Brutus and Titus were grunting as they shoveled dirt in. Aurelia squatted by the edge of the pit, looking at me with intense amusement. What's wrong? Weren't you acting all tough at the mall just now? In all these years, no one has ever dared to yell at me like that. If it were anyone else, I would have fed them to the lions in South Africa by now. But burying you alive seems like a pretty fun option too. Watching the dirt pile getting higher and higher, I had no choice but to beg for my life. Big sister, spare me. You're not a creep at all. It was my stupid mouth running wild. You are a massively wonderful person. From now on, this lowly servant will follow your every command. Hearing this, Aurelia finally let out a cold snort. Pull him up. Don't fill the pit entirely. We might need it for next time. The next day, it was the Meet the Parents Day. I was sleeping like a log when suddenly a brutally heavy slap landed right on my butt. The pain jolted me completely awake. My eyes snapped open to see a 1.9-meter tall, heavily muscled, middle-aged man standing by the bed. His face was covered in scruffy stubble with a classic, rugged, square jaw. I instantly deflated. Why are you here? I hadn't told him that Valeria and I broke up. Even the fact that I was living at Aurelia's place was only known by a few people. I asked in total confusion. Wait, Uncle? How did you even find this place? I asked Uncle to come over. Aurelia's voice drifted in from the doorway. My uncle looked at us with a very complicated expression. I never expected you two little brats to actually end up together in the end. Is this what they call destiny? I was completely lost in the sauce. What the heck did that mean? My uncle frowned. You didn't know? You and Aurelia have an arranged marriage agreement. You guys moved in together. I assumed you already knew. I was thoroughly, completely dumbfounded. I looked at Aurelia in utter disbelief. She just smiled sweetly and held my gaze. Did our fake marriage just become a real one? Just then, Mrs. Gable's voice shouted from downstairs. Miss! Madam and the master are back! My uncle turned around, muttering. That guy surnamed Shen is back? I gotta go take a good look at him. Then he roared at me. Get up right now! You're a grown man. Why the heck are you sleeping in? I should have tossed you into the military camp to be drilled properly back then. After lecturing me, my uncle turned and left. I got out of bed, got dressed, and washed up. I noticed a missed call on my phone, ignored it, and headed downstairs. In the small courtyard of the villa, Aurelia's father, Sterling, had a face full of suspicion. Why is a brute like you in my daughter's house? My uncle curled his lip. I came to see nephew-in-law. You old fox, you're still looking as flimsy as the wind. Ha! Who's an old fox like you? The two old men immediately started bickering the second they met. Aurelia's mother, Serenity, walked over and rubbed my head. She smiled and said, If it isn't little Caspian, haven't seen you in years and you're still as handsome as ever. I looked at Aurelia in total confusion. What exactly is going on here? Did we know each other in the past? Your dad saved Sterling's life back in the day. Your mom was pregnant with you at the time, and Auntie Serenity was pregnant too. So they set up an arranged marriage, but after the car crash, the engagement was basically left hanging. After my parents passed away, my uncle took me away from the Magic City. We didn't come back until high school. After I met Valeria, he never brought up the arranged marriage thing. He never expected we'd actually end up living together. I leaned close to Aurelia's ear and whispered, Big sister, we are in a fake marriage. Once we trick your parents, we go our separate ways. Right? Aurelia put on a look of total innocence. Hubby, what are you talking about? I don't understand. Having finally scammed me into her hands, how could she possibly let me run away? Serenity looked at me with incredibly affectionate eyes. I was originally worried she'd get scammed by some bad guy, but seeing that it's you, little Caspian, Auntie can finally put her heart at ease. Aurelia immediately corrected her. It's hubby. We've already gotten our marriage certificate. This made Serenity even more ecstatic about me. Mrs. Gable smiled and said, let's head inside first. Lunch is almost ready. My uncle said proudly. I'll let you off the hook today, you old fox. Little Caspian, hurry up and help cook. After we eat, come to the hospital with me. Oh, I absent-mindedly walked toward the kitchen. A fake marriage actually turned into a real one. Doesn't that mean from now on? Thinking back to what happened that night, I could only sigh and accept my new identity. Who told me to get gobbled up already anyway? I vaguely remembered knowing Aurelia when we were little, but back then she was just a whiny little girl who loved to act spoiled. After my parents died, I refused to think about the past, so that entire memory slowly faded away into nothingness. Since there were a lot of people today, Mrs. Gable had bought a ton of groceries. Father Shen and the others were chatting in the living room. I was in the kitchen washing vegetables. Aurelia walked in to help. She said casually. Sticking with me, you won't lose out. I'll never be like your ex-girlfriend. She's way too greedy. Karma will get her eventually. Plus, I can do household chores too, see? Watching her aggressively scrubbing a piece of cilantro, it was glaringly obvious she never stepped foot in a kitchen. I said, let me just wash the vegetables. You go cook the rice. How much rice should I put? Just one pot. Like this? I meant cook enough for one pot, not dump the entire bag of rice into the pot. She glared at me. Are you yelling at me? My soul is tired. Just destroy me already. Getting stuck with a wife like this. Did I owe the entire Milky Way galaxy money in my past life? After lunch, my uncle dragged me to the internal medicine department of the Magic City People's Hospital. An ENT doctor was currently examining a patient named Maverick. The doctor stared at the medical report with a deeply troubled frown. He said it might be nerve-related tinnitus, but couldn't give a definitive diagnosis. It didn't drastically affect his daily life, so he suggested trying traditional Chinese medicine. Maverick's situation was rather unique. He was a sniper. Tinnitus was an absolutely fatal career ender for him. My uncle suddenly boomed with a loud voice, I brought a TCM doctor right here! And then he yanked me straight into the room. On the way here, I had already gotten the rundown on Maverick's condition. He was hit by the blast of a grenade, which caused the tinnitus and intermittent deafness. My uncle was his commanding officer. He knew Maverick was his most naturally gifted soldier. He couldn't bear to see his career ruined by this illness, so he dragged him everywhere looking for a cure. Seeing how young I was, the doctor instantly looked highly skeptical. Treating patients isn't child's play. TCM is profoundly complex and takes decades to master. Are we sure this little bro can actually do it? I didn't waste breath arguing. I told Maverick to lie down on the hospital bed. Then I pulled 2 hair-thin silver needles from my waist. Both the doctor and Maverick watched in dead silence. I instructed Maverick to perform a series of actions. Open your mouth, make a sound. Pinch your nose, breathe out through your nose. 1, 2, 3. Open! Exhale. Good. In less than 10 minutes, I packed away my silver needles. My uncle looked at me with extreme suspicion. That's it? You're done? Are you just trying to scam us? I replied calmly. It wasn't a major illness to begin with. I just used the silver needles to stimulate the nerves, that's all. I joked. My base consultation fee is $500K. I'll give you a 50% discount, $250K. Cash or card? My uncle's eyes widened like saucers, and he slapped me brutally hard on the butt. Son of a biscuit! You dare ask your old uncle for money? He essentially transferred all his monthly salary to the families of his fallen comrades, so he was genuinely strapped for cash, but he was a man highly worthy of respect. Maverick, how do you feel? General Gideon asked with deep concern. Maverick said with absolute astonishment, Boss, I can hear sounds so much clearer now. He looked at me with intense excitement, looking like he wanted to tackle me into a massive bear hug. From now on, you are literally my blood brother. Whoa, chill. I'm not into dudes. I took 2 steps back. Remember to do the exercises I just showed you 30 times a day. Keep it up for a month. If you still feel uncomfortable after that, come find me. Maverick nodded enthusiastically. The internal medicine doctor, standing nearby, sighed in awe. The wonders of Hua country's traditional Chinese medicine, truly profound and unfathomable. I figured my pro bono charity work for the day was done. I turned around and waved. All right, uncle, you guys chat. I'm out of here. General Gideon nodded. Go on! Your aunt is arriving in the Magic City the day after tomorrow. Pixie really misses you. Don't forget to come over for dinner. However, in the exact same hospital corridor, I ran straight into Valeria. She was currently supporting her grandma, walking toward the elevator alongside Quentin. Her grandma's leg had some issues. Doctors recommended surgery, but the risks were too high. Grandma Gertrude complained grumpily. Call Caspian over here. Tell him to stick 2 needles in me. So what if you guys broke up? Does he not have an ounce of respect? Valeria was hesitating. Quentin, with his sharp eyes, spotted me immediately. He exclaimed in surprise, Isn't that Caspian? Perfect timing. Let's have him take a look at Grandma. Have me treat her? Hearing this, I felt a massive wave of speechlessness wash over me. I looked at Quentin, Valeria, and her Grandma Gertrude. I literally couldn't believe I managed to run into this circus just by visiting a hospital. Toward this entire family, I had zero positive feelings left, especially this entitled old bat. Grandma Gertrude spoke up, still sounding as arrogantly self-righteous as ever. Caspian, my leg is acting up again. Hurry up and treat it. You ate my Liu family's rice for so many years. Now that you broke up, you think you can just run away? Hurry up and take out those broken needles of yours and poke me. Quentin also chimed in with a mocking smile. Yeah, Caspian. Hurry up and look at Grandma. After all, this is literally the only useful skill you possess. Both of them were throwing thinly veiled insults to put me down. I shot a glance at Valeria, who remained completely silent. Then I looked at Quentin. I let out a sneer. Well, my only useful skill is still infinitely better than a certain someone's lip-syncing clown show at a concert, which is still trending on the hot searches right now. Much respect, much respect. Quentin's face instantly turned the color of a bruised eggplant. But with the grandma standing right there, he couldn't throw a tantrum. He could only shoot me a venomous glare, burning this grudge into his heart. I then turned my attention to the old lady. Folding my arms, I said, I can treat you, but my appearance fee starts at a minimum of 1 million. Pay up, and I treat you instantly. Hearing this, the old lady pointed a shaking finger at me and cursed furiously, You ungrateful little wretch. It's just 2 pokes with a needle and you dare ask for money? Have you completely forgotten who took you in after you graduated? Truly a bastard with no parents. Zero upbringing. The second those words left her mouth, before I could even react, a thunderous roar erupted from nearby, startling everyone in the vicinity. You old hag, what the heck did you just say? I looked over. It was my uncle. He had just finished thanking the doctor with Maverick and was about to find a place to grab a drink. He never expected to hear this old bat saying something so vile. How could he possibly hold back? His hulking frame closed the distance in seconds, and he delivered a direct, brutal backhand slap. The old lady crashed onto the floor instantly. You dare hit me? A trail of glaring red blood seeped from the corner of the old lady's mouth. It looked pretty horrifying. The bystanders watching the drama unfold were completely stunned. General Gideon didn't care about any of that. He pulled out a handgun, aimed it right at the old lady, and sneered, I hit you, so what? Do you want me to treat you to a peanut? Bullet? Seeing this, Quentin was so terrified his legs almost turned to jelly. Valeria hastily shielded her grandma, gritting her teeth as she said, Carrying a firearm is illegal. You are committing a crime. General Gideon casually and unhurriedly pulled out his military firearm permit. Everyone was instantly silenced. I quickly scurried over to my uncle's side and whispered, Uncle, you're about to be the deputy mayor. Pulling a gun out here isn't exactly a great look, is it? My uncle curled his lip in utter disdain. So what? I haven't even officially taken office yet. Worst case scenario, I get fired. It's fine. You can support me financially anyway. Seeing the situation, Maverick clapped his hands loudly to draw the crowd's attention. He spoke with absolute authority. Everyone, you can record this, but do not edit the video out of context, and absolutely do not post it online. This old lady insulted the family of a military serviceman first. Major General Gu only stepped in to issue a warning. At this moment, Samyun in the crowd chimed in. This old lady had a terrible attitude to begin with. She even cursed out that handsome little brother. Quickly, many people started echoing their agreement. General Gideon holstered his gun and shot Grandma Gertrude a bone-chilling glare. If I ever hear you say garbage like that again, it won't end as simply as today. Behave yourself. Otherwise, I'll personally throw you in jail. With that, he grabbed me and walked away. Let's go, nephew. The crowd of onlookers quickly dispersed. Quentin's face was completely dark. Grandma Gertrude violently shoved him away. She had been observing this future son-in-law's performance very closely. She snapped angrily, I don't need a useless coward like you helping me. Look at you. The second trouble hits, your legs start shaking in terror. You're not even half the man Caspian is. I seriously don't know what Valeria saw in a pathetic coward like you. Saying that, she started limping toward the surgery department. After taking 2 steps, she felt a bit breathless. So she turned her head back and yelled at Quentin furiously. What are you still standing there for like an idiot? Hurry up and come help me. You have absolutely zero situational awareness. Quentin was so angry he almost exploded on the spot. But thinking about the Liu family's massive fortune, he forcefully swallowed his pride. He plastered on a flattering smile and hurried over. Just as I walked out the front doors of the hospital, I heard a voice calling out from behind. Caspian? Wait a second. I turned my head. It was actually Valeria. I stopped in my tracks and asked coldly, Do you still need something? Once upon a time, I truly, genuinely loved Valeria. But that was the old her, not this current, profit-obsessed, toxic woman. Valeria hesitated for a long time before finally speaking. It's about what happened 9 years ago. Those words yanked back a memory. That year, I was just a freshman in high school. I had just moved back to the Magic City, a place overflowing with memories of my parents. The pressure and grief were so immense I wanted to jump into a river and end it all. But right at the exact moment I jumped, someone grabbed me. It was a foggy gray night. I heard a sentence, instead of dying without anyone caring. Why don't you think about how to make the people who do care about you happy? You coward! When I woke up again, I was lying in a hospital bed. It was Valeria who called the ambulance. From that moment on, I started liking her and began pursuing her. Memory playback ended. I looked at Valeria, fully understanding her motive for bringing this up right now. I took a deep breath and said with absolute calmness, "This is the very last time I will help you. After this incident is resolved, I and you, Valeria, will have absolutely zero connection forever." With that, I turned around and walked away. Valeria looked at my retreating back with highly complicated emotions until I completely disappeared from view. She returned to the hospital, feeling incredibly hollow inside. It wasn't regret. It was just the painful realization that she had let a flawless ultimate asset slip through her fingers. Returning to the Panlong villa, I saw Serenity sitting on the living room sofa, holding a thick catalog in her hands. She smiled and waved me over. "Little Caspian, you're back just in time! Hurry up and come see which wedding dress suits Aurelia best. Since you guys already got the certificate, we might as well hold the wedding early so I can hold my grandkids sooner." Aurelia sat on the side, the corner of her mouth slightly upturned. I had just sat down and took a look at the catalog. It was filled with pictures of various wedding dresses. I honestly had no idea how to choose. So I just said, "She looks beautiful in anything." Serenity laughed joyfully. "You're such a sweet talker. Truly a worthy husband for my Aurelia." After chatting for a bit, Serenity dragged Sterling out to buy groceries. I shimmied over to Aurelia and started massaging her shoulders and back. I said in an overly flattering tone, "Wifey, can I trouble you for a tiny little favor?" Aurelia casually and calmly patted my head. "Speak." A few moments later, I was being pinned to the floor and stepped on by her foot. She pointed right at my face, her expression dark and terrifying. "You actually want me to go help your ex-girlfriend? Believe it or not, I will chop you into 8 pieces right now." I hurriedly explained the origin of the whole situation. I could have originally asked my uncle for help, but he was just about to take office as the deputy mayor. It wasn't appropriate to bother him with this kind of corporate mess. Left with no choice, I could only beg Aurelia. Business conflicts are best solved by business people anyway. After listening to my explanation, Aurelia let out a highly intrigued smile. "Interesting. Fine, I'll go take a trip with you tomorrow. So how do you plan to thank me?" Mentioning compensation, I scratched my head awkwardly. "We're a married couple. This tiny little favor," she held up 2 fingers, and said with profound meaning, "My parents will be living here for a while. It's not exactly great if we sleep in separate rooms, right? Who sleeps in separate rooms right after getting their marriage certificate?" My face flushed a few shades redder. I nodded. "I don't mind, as long as you're willing." Then she dropped her second condition. "Hand over every single penny you've earned over these years." I instantly widened my eyes in protest. "You have tens of billions in family fortune, and you still want my meager savings?" She replied with absolute boss energy. "When men have money, they slip out of control. You are only allowed to use the allowance I give you, 500K a month." Defeated, I transferred my entire life savings, a grand total of 300K, over to her. She fell into deep thought. I asked with immense excitement, "Wifey, when does my allowance for this month hit my account?" She angrily messed up my hair and scolded furiously. "Did you hide a secret stash somewhere? How is it possible you only have 300K after all these years?" I rubbed my nose and said proudly, "My uncle borrowed it all. This is all that's left." Over the years, my uncle had borrowed around 10 million in total from me in bits and pieces. All of it went to subsidizing the families of his fallen brothers in arms. Downstairs at the Genesis Entertainment Building, the red carpet was lined with vibrant flower baskets on both sides. Banners fluttered in the wind, saying, "Welcome VIP name for your visit." Senior VP Clementine was personally supervising the setup, her expression carrying a hint of intense excitement. "That flower basket over there is crooked. Pull the banner up a little higher. Today concerns the very survival of our company. Everyone, look alive. As long as we successfully secure this investment, every single one of you is getting a bonus this month." Because right when she got to work this morning, she received massive news. The Century Group, valued at over tens of billions, was interested in investing. Inside the CEO's office at Genesis Entertainment, Valeria summoned the company's absolute top-tier stars, 5 people in total, including Quentin. After giving them a strict rundown of the protocols, she said, "Quentin, you will be responsible for standing at the very front to welcome CEO Shen. This is a fantastic opportunity. I hope you cherish it." Quentin agreed, brimming with overconfidence. "Don't worry, leave it to me." Although the other 4 were secretly dissatisfied, they couldn't really say anything. Who told him to have such a hardcore backstage backer? Valeria checked her watch. "It's about time. Everyone head down to welcome them. Improvise and be smart." The 5 of them nodded and left the office, leaving her sitting alone, rubbing her temples, looking incredibly exhausted. She knew very well that this sudden investment from the Century Group was definitely tied to me, but she still felt a deep sense of regret in her heart. She originally wanted to utilize this person much better. Her thoughts couldn't help but drift back to that night 9 years ago. She had been out for a night jog. She found me passed out by the roadside and called 120. When I woke up, I thanked her for saving my life. In reality, someone else had already rescued me before she even got there, but she chose to hide that fact. She shook her head, comforting herself internally. She was probably the only person on Earth who knew the truth about that incident. There's no way the person from back then would suddenly just pop up, right? Time ticked by. At the road right in front of the building, the employees and executives of Genesis Entertainment watched with bated breath. At the end of the road, a low-key yet overwhelmingly luxurious Rolls-Royce Cullinan slowly drove over. Quentin, standing at the very front of the crowd, was trembling with excitement. This was the eldest heiress of a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate. If he could just hook up with her, his career would blast off into the stratosphere. The car stopped. He adjusted his collar and stepped forward. The moment the car door opened, he immediately executed a perfect 90-degree bow. His voice boomed with power. "Welcome, CEO Shen, to our humble company." However, what entered his ears was a familiar, highly sarcastic voice. "Toxk, I absolutely cannot accept such a massive bow. People who don't know might think a son is bowing to his own daddy." Quentin snapped his head up, shocked beyond belief. "Caspian? Why the hell is it you? Isn't it CEO Shen?" Before I could even speak, I was shoved aside. Aurelia then stepped out of the car, wearing an elegantly dark long dress and stepping in high heels. Her face was cold and exquisitely beautiful, her aura screaming high-class nobility. Quentin froze on the spot. Valeria noticed his expression and felt a slight pang of dissatisfaction in her heart. But she didn't say anything. After all, even she couldn't help but feel a deep sense of envy when looking at Aurelia. I shot a deeply resentful look at Aurelia. I wasn't even finished with my cool lines yet. "What are you doing?" Aurelia completely ignored me. She swept her gaze across the surroundings and finally locked onto Valeria. She smiled sweetly and extended her hand. "You must be CEO Lu. First time meeting, my name is Aurelia, and the guy standing next to me is my attendant. I mean, hubby. You guys should be pretty familiar with each other, so I won't bother introducing him." Valeria's heart violently lurched. She forcefully suppressed the incredibly complicated emotions swirling inside her. She politely shook Aurelia's hand, forcing a smile. "I've heard so much about you. Welcome, CEO Shen." Many employees of Genesis Entertainment had seen me before. Hearing Aurelia's words right now, every single one of them was shocked speechless. Wait, wasn't this their CEO's boyfriend? How did he instantly transform into the husband of this mega CEO? Valeria's heart sank to the bottom of the ocean. She knew Aurelia was establishing dominance right out of the gate, but she had no choice but to extend her hand and shake it. Immediately after, Brutus took a step forward, handing over a pristine handkerchief. Right in front of absolutely everyone, Aurelia used the handkerchief to meticulously wipe the hand that had just touched Valeria. Then she casually tossed it onto the ground. "My apologies, CEO Lu. I'm a bit of a germaphobe. You don't mind, right?" "No, not at all." Valeria managed a painfully strained smile. Her fists were clenched tight, but she didn't dare act out. She absolutely could not afford to offend Aurelia. As long as she could secure the investment, she could swallow any amount of humiliation. She was just slightly confused in her heart. Caspian actually knew Aurelia? If she had known he had this kind of insane networking power earlier, she never would have treated him the way she did before. Walking into the Genesis Entertainment Company. Following the itinerary, we arrived at the practice studio. Clementine signaled 2 female trainees with strong vocals to begin their performance, but Aurelia displayed absolutely zero interest. She glanced around the practice room, and her gaze finally landed on Quentin. The corner of her mouth twitched upwards into a smirk. "You must be CEO Lu's current boyfriend, right? To be favored by a proud daughter of heaven like her, you must be quite extraordinary. Why don't you also show off your ultimate skill for us?" The corner of Quentin's mouth violently spasmed. If he actually had an ultimate skill, would he be hiding in the corner right now? He scratched his head awkwardly and forced a laugh. "I'm afraid my skills are too shallow. I wouldn't dare show off in front of CEO Shen. Our company has plenty of other stars who sing beautifully. Why don't we let— I told you to go, so go. Are you deliberately disrespecting me?" Aurelia's voice was freezing cold. Her attitude was aggressively domineering, leaving absolutely zero room for refusal. Sitting next to her, my heart felt a burst of warmth. I knew she was standing up for me. She looked like a mean girl on the outside, but deep down, she actually had a pretty good heart. Left with no choice, Quentin stepped forward and took the microphone. Normally, relying on his backstage backer, he hogged all the resources and bossed the girls around like a tyrant. Now that they had the chance to see him make a total fool of himself, they were naturally thrilled. Some even whipped out their phones to record it. Quentin stammered for a long time, before finally saying in a trembling voice, "To then, I'll sing a song I'm relatively good at." The assistant started the music. He literally couldn't sing to save his life. He only knew how to act. Now that he had no setup to fake it, his only option was to pick the song he had practiced a few times when he was confessing to Valeria back in the day. But even that was just barely tolerable. Sure enough, the second he opened his mouth, he was painfully off-key. 3 minutes later, Quentin scurried back to his seat, his face burning with absolute shame. He had completely thrown his face into the garbage disposal today. I dropped a cold, sarcastic comment. "So this is it, huh? Standing so far at the front downstairs earlier. I really thought you were some kind of ace vocalist. Now I see the bar for being a singer is practically underground." Valeria couldn't take it anymore. She forcefully suppressed her blazing anger, looked at Aurelia, and said, "Shouldn't it be about time we get to the main topic?" "Of course, then let's change to a different place to chat." The stars and artists were dismissed. Only a few top executives from Genesis Entertainment followed them to the conference room. But at the door, Aurelia told them to wait outside. "I don't like things being overly complicated. CEO Liu, you come in with me. The rest of you wait outside." I wanted to follow them in too, but Aurelia landed a swift kick right on my butt. "You wait outside too," after the conference room doors shut. I rubbed my butt as I stood up from the floor, grumbling in sheer dissatisfaction. "What are you looking at? Don't you know hitting is kissing and scolding is loving?" I muttered internally. "This crazy lady gives absolutely zero face. Sooner or later, I'm going to discipline her properly. Otherwise, she won't even know who the head of the household is." Inside the conference room, Valeria brought out the contract. She felt a massive wave of relief in her heart. After all, considering she saved Caspian's life, signing this contract should be a guaranteed lock. However, Aurelia had absolutely zero intention of signing anything. Instead, she asked, "Valeria, I heard you saved Caspian's life in the past. I'm very curious, how exactly did that happen?" Valeria looked shocked, but she still recited the fabricated fairy tale she had prepared. How she grabbed Caspian, who was about to jump into the river, and sent him to the hospital. The smile had completely vanished from Aurelia's face. She stared dead into Valeria's eyes. Is that what really happened? Being stared at so intensely, Valeria panicked slightly, but she maintained a calm facade and said, "I don't know what you're trying to imply." The very next second, Aurelia grabbed the contract and smashed it right into her face, accompanied by a voice as cold as absolute zero. "You lie so naturally. You steal another woman's man, and you don't even cherish him. I was wondering how he could possibly like a shameless, thick-skinned woman like you. And even now, you dare to use this incident to force him to help you. Why don't you just go die?" Following Aurelia's rapid-fire barrage of words, Valeria's face turned deathly pale. She even forgot to fight back. Could it be that the person who saved Caspian back then was her? Exactly. The person who grabbed Caspian by the bridge all those years ago was none other than Aurelia. She remembered being so desperate to go find Caspian that night, only to bump into him trying to unalive himself. After saving him, she left in a fit of pure rage, because he hadn't kept their promise. But she never in a million years imagined that Valeria would swoop in and steal the credit. Later on, when Aurelia found out Caspian liked Valeria and started pursuing her, she stopped looking for him entirely. If she had known from the very beginning that Caspian's affection for Valeria was entirely based on that stolen incident, she would have tied that man up and dragged him home that very night no matter what. Then this entire massive, ridiculous misunderstanding would have never happened. Right now, Aurelia was staring at Valeria with eyes as cold as glaciers. She spoke with an icy, biting tone. "You are completely unworthy of him, because you don't even deserve a fraction of his excellence. That absolute potato head from earlier suits you much better. After all, trash pairs perfectly with a thief. What happened today, I expect you to take it and let it rot in your stomach forever. If you dare let him find out about this." Aurelia's tone turned eerily calm. She stared at Valeria like she was looking at a dead object. Enunciating every single word, she said, "I will make sure your Liu family never sees a single day of peace again." With that, she let out a cold snort and walked out of the conference room. Outside the conference room, I was literally just pondering what to eat for dinner when I saw Aurelia walk out radiating pure murderous intent. Confused, I quickly jogged to catch up with her. "Why does your face look so terrible? What happened? Did you turn mute?" But Aurelia just angrily landed another swift kick right on my butt. She bared her teeth and claws, looking like she wanted to throw hands. Terrified, I turned and sprinted away. Quentin excitedly dashed into the conference room. "The contract is definitely signed, right? I made a massive fool of myself out there. You can't forget about my contribution." Valeria's emotions had completely shattered. She just wanted to be entirely alone. She screamed in pure rage. "Get out! Let me have some peace and quiet!" Clementine sensed that her bestie's emotional state was completely off. She quickly dragged Quentin out of there. Quentin aggressively shook off her hand. "Valeria's in a bad mood. Can't you see that?" Clementine snapped back without an ounce of mercy. "I seriously have no idea what Valeria sees in you. You have zero situational awareness and absolutely zero actual ability. Caspian was so much better. He cooks beautifully. His medical skills are incredible, and he never causes anyone stress." She sighed deeply, turned and walked away. Quentin was furious. "Clementine, what the heck do you mean by that? How am I useless?" The other executives stood to the side, treating it like a free comedy show, laughing internally. A guy who literally lives off a woman actually thinks he has real talent? Leaving Genesis Entertainment, Aurelia and I went to the cinema to catch a movie. She clung to my arm, her face completely devoid of expression. "Everything you did with Valeria while you were dating. Starting from right now, you have to do them all with me. Whatever she had, I must have. And whatever she didn't have, I must have too." I chuckled cheekily. "She never kneeled before me. How about you?" Before I could even finish my sentence, a massive slap had already landed perfectly on my face. Facts have proven, absolutely never, ever provoke a woman who is actively drinking vinegar. Jealous. Otherwise, you'll get a free one-time use handprint tattoo. After the events of the morning, Valeria completely lost all motivation to work. She handed over the company's affairs to Clementine to manage, preparing to give herself a period of time to cool off. The very first thing Clementine did upon taking charge was completely strip Quentin of all his resources and distribute them equally among the other artists. This enraged Quentin so much he stormed in for a confrontation. If you actually had talent, you wouldn't lose a single resource. But since you have zero talent and you're just hogging the toilet without doing the deed, then I'm sorry. Roll away as far as you possibly can. Without Valeria acting as his ultimate shield, Quentin couldn't even lift his head up in the company. Fuming with anger, Quentin returned to his office and started making phone calls to call in some backup. He was determined to teach Caspian a brutal lesson. Mr. Quentin, your request is quite tricky. After all, that guy is tied to the Shen family. You gotta pay extra for that flavor. How much do you want? 5 million. We'll kidnap the kid according to your demands and force him to film some artistic videos with female artists. By then, his reputation will be completely destroyed. Quentin gritted his teeth. Fine, I'll pay the 5 million. Haha, then please await our good news, Mr. Quentin. Early in the morning, a breeze blew through and I instantly woke up shivering. I quickly hugged the giant heat pack in my arms tighter. I opened my eyes and looked. Holy guacamole. This wasn't a heat pack. It was the fragrant, soft Aurelia. She was curled up in my arms like a lazy little cat, sleeping incredibly soundly. I sighed deeply. We agreed to split the big bed 50-50, but now it had completely become the sovereign territory of the Aurelia Empire. She was so unreasonable even when she slept. To prevent a certain morning flag from rising, I tucked her in and bolted into the bathroom to wash up. A crisp white shirt paired with a fresh, clean haircut. Looking at myself in the mirror, I smiled in absolute satisfaction. I truly am the most handsome man in Hua country. After tidying up quickly, I rushed to the airport to pick up my aunt and my little cousin. The plane landed at the Magic City airport. Suddenly, I heard a childish, high-pitched scream. Big bad demon brother! A little girl wearing a pink backpack charged toward me like a missile, followed closely behind by Aunt Josephine, who was wearing a long dress. The little girl launched herself into my arms and asked excitedly, "Did you miss Pixie?" I put on a highly disgusted expression. "Who would miss you? You little fatty, you got heavier." Pixie waved her tiny fists, protesting fiercely. "Pixie is not chubby." I laughed and took over my aunt's suitcase and backpack. Aunt Josephine smiled and looked me up and down. "Not bad at all. You've grown taller again. You're way more handsome than your dad was when he was young." Upon arriving home, my aunt looked at the massive detached villa, her face filled with shock. "This is my wife's house. We just got our marriage certificate 2 days ago. Auntie, you should know her. She's from the Shen family." Aunt Josephine had an instant epiphany. "It's that little girl from the Shen family? The one you kept crying to marry when you were a kid?" I recalled the events from my childhood and couldn't help but sigh emotionally. Feelings really are debts accumulated from childhood. I walked over and sat down next to Aurelia. "Let me ask you something," Aurelia replied flatly. "Speak." I probed carefully. "That night, were you genuinely drugged by someone? Or," before I even finished my sentence, Aurelia looked at me like I was a complete moron. "Who in the entire Magic City do you think would dare drug me? Stop reading those brain-rotting trash novels. Reading too much will make you stupid." "Aha! So you admit you purposely did that to me? What you did is technically a crime." I never expected that from the very beginning. I was completely played by this woman, and she was actually acting so self-righteous about it too. I lamented my fate with a bitter face. The longest road I will ever walk in this life is Aurelia's trap. Whatever. A trap is a trap. I'll just consider it paying off the debt for the silly things I said as a kid. Aurelia's smile completely froze. "You actually remember what you said as a kid?" I was confused. I didn't get amnesia. Why wouldn't I remember? The very next second I was greeted by Aurelia's furious, exasperated fists, punching and kicking simultaneously. "You remember, yet you still went and dated that woman? You absolute scumbag. Watch me beat you to a pulp." "Ah, wait, stop!" I literally just remembered it right now. "Ouch! Lighter! Lighter!" In the evening, General Gideon finished work and came home. The whole massive family sat together for a reunion dinner. I took a bite of the braised pork trotter and couldn't help but give my father-in-law a massive thumbs up. "Delicious!" Father-in-law Sterling said with immense pride. "Of course it's delicious. Back in the day, just to make your mother-in-law happy, I specifically worked as an apprentice in a 5-star hotel for 2 whole years." "You're still young, kid. You've got a lot to learn." Right at that moment, little Pixie, who was munching on a sticky rice dumpling, found a coin hidden inside. She screamed in surprise. "Mommy, there's something dirty in my dumpling." Aunt Josephine rubbed her head and laughed. "Silly girl, you just hit the jackpot. Whoever eats the dumpling with the hidden coin gets 1 wish granted." Little Pixie excitedly pointed her finger at me and Aurelia. "Then I want to see big sister and brother kiss." Under the highly expectant gaze of the entire table, my heart jumped straight into my throat. I had never actively initiated a kiss with a girl before. I had absolutely zero experience in this field. Aurelia, however, directly put down her chopsticks, turned around, grabbed my head decisively, and initiated the kiss herself. My uncle and father-in-law started a drinking contest. The two of them drank until they were dead drunk, lying completely flat on the floor. I was also forced to drink half a bottle of baijiu, white liquor. Back in the bedroom, I pulled Aurelia by her soft waist, pinning her under me, and asked in a husky voice, "That was way too fast earlier. Can we do it one more time?" Aurelia gently closed her eyes, but after waiting for a while, she realized I had literally fallen asleep. She was so angry her mouth twitched. She desperately wanted to slap this blockhead twice across the face. Early the next morning, under the highly shocked gazes of the employees, I followed Aurelia into the company. Aurelia started processing a mountain of documents, while I boredly played around with my silver needles. Suddenly, my phone rang. Little Caspian got another gig. This time the payload is 2 million. A few minutes later, I stood up and walked toward the door. I didn't forget to wave goodbye to Aurelia. "You keep working hard. Hubby is going to go earn some baby formula money. Don't miss me too much, okay?" In the Liu family's living room, Reginald hung up the phone with a terrifyingly ugly expression. It was the 5th call today regarding withdrawn investments. These shareholders were all brought in by his daughter. Now they were all pulling their funding simultaneously. There had to be a reason. Another call came through. Also a shareholder wanting to withdraw. A minor shareholder named Chen Ming. He hurriedly asked, "Brother Chen Ming, you gotta at least give me a reason for pulling out. I feel like I've completely offended some massive VIP without knowing." The voice on the other end simply said, "You know that kid Caspian, who almost became your son-in-law, right? That kid runs a highly famous skincare public account on WeChat. All these investors originally invested in you guys purely because of him. Now that you guys have cut ties, of course we're pulling our investments." Hearing these words from the side, Valeria felt her entire world spin. Her face turned paper white. So it turned out, everyone invested in her solely because of Caspian. And now that Caspian was gone, these people were bouncing too. Right at this moment, Valeria's phone rang. It was a call from Quentin. She walked up to her second-floor bedroom and answered it wearily. "Do you need something?" Quentin said with bubbling excitement. "Valeria, I've got amazing news for you. I chatted with the young master of the Wu family for a long time. He's decided to invest 20 million into Genesis Entertainment." This news brought a tiny sliver of life back into Valeria's eyes. A 20 million investment was absolutely not a small number. Quentin must have racked his brains to secure this funding for her. If they could just survive this crisis, then it was probably time to finally give herself to him. Meanwhile, after hanging up the phone, Quentin dialed another number. "Quentin, you really are willing to sell out even your own girlfriend?" Quentin replied with a greasy, flattering tone. "Young Master Wu, only someone of your stature is truly worthy of tasting a top-tier beauty like Valeria." Monty laughed uproariously. "Ha ha ha ha. Excellent. As long as you trick her into coming over tomorrow, the chairman's seat is all yours." And I, after meeting up with Bart, followed the GPS to an isolated villa in the suburbs. Bart explained that this time, the patient was double disabled and suffered from severe depression. Her family had settled her in the suburbs. At the villa's entrance, a nanny came out to greet us. "You must be Dr. Zhang, I presume? Please come right in. You know who I am?" I raised an eyebrow, but I felt a very subtle sense that something was wrong. Walking into the villa, I smelled a very faint fragrance. I narrowed my eyes slightly and whispered to Bart, "There's something wrong with this place. Don't act recklessly." The nanny said it was her first time meeting me. Yet the second I walked in, she recognized me instantly. That proved she was lying. Bart hurriedly whispered back, "Then what do we do? Should we just bolt?" This was the first time I actually felt this kind of intense tension. Although I guess the nanny might have seen my photo beforehand, I still felt a deep sense of unease. The nanny brought out some tea. Seeing that we were still standing, to warmly ushered us. "Why are you two still standing? Please have a seat. The miss is still sleeping right now. I'll take you up to see her condition in a bit." I poured myself a cup of tea and took a tiny sip, but I immediately turned my head and spat the tea onto the floor. I asked with ice-cold hostility, "Why is this tea laced with such a heavy dose of drugs?" The nanny's face stiffened instantly. She forced a rigid smile. "Dr. Jiang must be joking. How could there possibly be drugs in the cup?" Bart and I exchanged a look, and immediately sprang up, sprinting toward the outside of the villa. Seeing this, the nanny pulled a walkie-talkie out of her pocket and commanded, "Attack them now!" Immediately, 10 men armed with weapons rushed down from the second floor. They chased after us fiercely. We busted out of the villa, only to find our car's tires had been slashed. We had no choice but to keep running down the road. After running for a bit, my body started losing all its strength. I realized that the fragrance in the living room was spiked. I cursed internally about being drugged. Right at that moment, a highly familiar figure appeared in the middle of the road ahead. It was Titus. He stood there, waiting for our pursuers to close in. Seeing Titus, those guys completely dismissed him. They figured with their sheer numbers, they could easily mop the floor with him, but they had absolutely no idea how terrifying Titus actually was. 10 minutes later, the pursuers who were previously so arrogant and fierce were all lying on the ground groaning in agony. Every single one of them was bruised and battered, their faces masked in sheer terror. Titus, however, rolled up his sleeves, looking incredibly serious as he tied one of them up and tossed him into the car's trunk. Then he completely knocked me and Bart out cold, just to prevent Bart from taking advantage of the situation and sampling his Mrs. Man. When I woke up again, I found myself wearing nothing but a pair of boxers, lying on the familiar sofa in the CEO's office. Aurelia's cold voice drifted over from nearby. "You're awake." She was sitting behind the desk. Her hair was slightly messy. It was blindingly obvious that some highly PG-13 not safe for work activities had just occurred. I quickly lifted my head and asked, "Where's Bart?" Aurelia replied in an utterly flat tone, "Threw him into a nightclub. Whether it's a blessing or a curse depends entirely on his own karma." She slowly walked over to me, her face dark and terrifying. "You've been a very bad boy, actually running off alone to such a remote place. Lucky for you, I had Titus tailing you this time. Otherwise, you'd be lying in some other woman's bed right now." I lowered my head guiltily and stuttered, "It won't happen again." But Aurelia had absolutely zero intention of letting me off the hook. She bit down hard on my neck. I inhaled a sharp breath of cold air from the pain. She let out a cold snort. "Next time you run into something like this, you better be careful. Instead of running around getting plotted against by others, you'd be better off honestly staying at home and figuring out how to butter me up and make me happy." Just then, a knock came from the door. Aurelia straightened her clothes, walked back behind the desk, and said coldly, "Come in." Titus walked in and reported, "Miss, I've investigated everything. A guy named Quentin paid $5 million to hire these people. His goal was to drug Mr. Jiang and have him film with female artists." Hearing this, I instantly exploded. "Holy guacamole, $5 million? This punk sure is willing to spend big bucks, actually daring to play dirty with me." Aurelia glanced out the window. Then she said, "Let's go home and eat dinner first. Tomorrow, Titus will go with him. If someone touches my man, they better be prepared to pay the ultimate price." That night, inside a hyper-luxurious private room in a Magic City nightclub, a butt-naked Bart groggily opened his eyes. He saw a 200-pound middle-aged woman staring at him with 1,000 watts of seductive charm. "Darling, you were so rough with me earlier, but I absolutely love you like this." Bart's eyes rolled into the back of his head and he fainted once again. Only a single thought remained in his mind. This absolutely must be a nightmare. He definitely hadn't woken up yet. Yes, that must be it. Thursday morning, Titus went out to gather intel. Since I worked overtime yesterday afternoon, I didn't sleep in. I woke up early to give the two elders and Mrs. Gable a massage. Serenity tasted the beauty soup I brewed for her, revealing an expression of absolute satisfaction. "Little Caspian is the best. Aurelia bagging you is truly her ultimate blessing. If she acts too bossy or unreasonable, just come to Mom. Mom will discipline her for you." I smiled and said, "Aurelia is actually really great. She just acts like a little kid sometimes." At 1 p.m., Aurelia dragged me to the company. She ordered her secretary register a private clinic under my husband's name, allocate an entire floor for him to open his clinic. As for the herbs and medical equipment, I quickly raised my hand. "I'll handle all that." Aurelia nodded. "For any necessary funds, just go straight to the company's finance department to get reimbursed. If you dare try to hide a secret stash of money again, you'll be sleeping in the same room as Brutus and Titus tonight." The secretary awkwardly backed out of the office, obviously having eaten way too much dog food, PDA. The Sentry Tower has 30 floors in total. Relying on the security department's manpower, they quickly cleared out the entire 19th floor and hung up the sign for Sentry Clinic. I immediately called Bart over. After all, running a clinic requires hands on deck. I teased him. "How was last night, buddy?" Bart said with righteous indignation. "Do you know my pure innocent virginity that I guarded for so many years is just gone like that? I feel so grossed out I want to throw up." I quickly comforted him. All right. My guys have already tracked down that punk's location. Tonight, we go get revenge." Soon, evening arrived. I brought Bart and Titus and headed straight to the Rose nightclub. This club exclusively catered to rich kids. The facilities were top-notch, and only VIP cardholders were allowed inside. I brought them straight into the Emperor VIP room. Inside the room, a bunch of rich second-generation kids were gathered around. The table was overflowing with ridiculously expensive alcohol and fruits, but their eyes were entirely glued to the sofa, where a woman with flushed cheeks was sitting. That woman was none other than Valeria. Quentin was currently bowing obsequiously to a young man sitting nearby. "Young Master Wu, this woman is all yours now. You can do whatever you want to her." Valeria's younger brother Cedric was standing to the side. His eyes were bloodshot red, struggling furiously. "Quentin, you absolute bastard. My sister trusted you so much." But he was pinned down by two bodyguards, forced to watch helplessly as his sister fell into the devil's clutches. His heart was filled with agonizing regret. Under the flashing neon lights of the private room, Valeria struggled to lift her eyelids, looking at Monty. She ground her teeth in fury and said, "Doing something like this? Aren't you afraid of the consequences?" She had originally followed Quentin here to sign a contract, only to be drugged by him right there in the room. Hearing this, Monty laughed uproariously. "Call the cops? Who's gonna believe you? Don't forget, your Liu family is just a dog raised by our Wu family." The rich kids surrounding them couldn't hold back anymore. They started urging Monty to make his move. Monty sneered coldly and tore at Valeria's clothes. The two bodyguards were in the middle of dragging Cedric outside. Right at that moment, the private room door was violently kicked open. The door slammed against the wall. The massive force made the entire room tremble slightly. Seeing the three people standing at the door, Cedric's eyes instantly lit up. He hurriedly screamed, "Caspian, please save my sister! Quentin drugged her!" I scanned the entire room. Quentin, standing next to Monty, instantly turned pale. I pointed right at Quentin and told Titus, "That's him. Grab him and bring him to me." Titus was just about to step forward when Monty's two bodyguards blocked his path. Their eyes were highly alert. Monty glared at me coldly. "He's under my protection. Take your people and get the hell out of here. Otherwise," I raised an eyebrow and said, "Are you sure he's under your protection? He spent $5 million to hire people to drug me. Are you planning to take the fall for him on that too?" Monty froze for a second. When he processed what I said, he furiously kicked Quentin. "Get lost. From this moment on, I don't know you." The moment those words left his mouth, Titus lunged forward and flipped Quentin to the ground. Two brutal slaps sent him spinning into a dizzy daze. Looking at the swooning Valeria, I flicked a silver needle straight into her neck. "Get her to a hospital within half an hour. She'll survive." Cedric looked at Valeria, who had passed out, and then at the two bodyguards blocking his way. He had no idea what to do. Thankfully, Monty waved his hand in utter annoyance. "Hurry up and take this woman and get lost. This young master has lost his mood. Who knows if Caspian had other backup plans? He absolutely did not want to take that kind of risk." Cedric was instantly overjoyed. As he carried Valeria on his back, his heart was secretly filled with massive regret. Even someone Monty feared, Caspian, was personally kicked out of the house by their Liu family. If they had just treated Caspian well back then, would everything have been completely different? Outside the private room, I sneered and said to Bart, "Today we absolutely must teach Quentin what karma means." Bart nodded. He waved his hand at Titus and said, "Let's go. Bring this punk back and treat him to some top-tier hospitality." At this moment, Quentin was tied up in a hidden room of a club. He was bound to a bed. A dirty rag was stuffed into his mouth. His eyes were bulging wide in terror. He struggled desperately but couldn't break free at all. I pulled 3 silver needles from my waist. Looking at him with sheer mockery, my face was plastered with a massive grin. "Don't be so impatient, young Master Chen. The nightlife has just begun. No need to get this excited. I'm a guy who really respects people. I have 3 needles here. 2 of them are coated with a special juice. If I stick them in, half of your manhood goes on permanent vacation, but if you pick the right one, I'll let you off the hook." Quentin's face was masked in absolute horror. He knew exactly what kind of methods I possessed, and he didn't doubt my words for a single second. But right now, he literally had no other path to take. He could only whimper woo-woo sounds, and finally settled on the needle in the middle. Smiling, I plunged the silver needle into his thigh. "How is it? Did he pick the right one?" Bart asked curiously. Under Quentin's intensely hopeful gaze, I nodded my head. He finally breathed a massive sigh of relief. However, my very next sentences scared him so badly his entire body started convulsing. "This needle isn't coated in the numbing juice, but it is coated in my personally developed super invincible aphrodisiac." Hearing this, Quentin struggled violently. His eyes were blazing with pure fury, as if to say, "You absolute punk, you don't follow martial arts ethics." Just as the situation was reaching its glorious climax, Titus walked in completely emotionlessly. Without saying a single word, he hoisted me onto his shoulder and walked out. "Hey, what are you doing? I'm not done playing yet. The miss ordered you to go home and sleep with her." Watching me being hauled away, Bart put on a highly aggrieved expression. "So what if you have a wife? You just love torturing this single dog, don't you? Sooner or later, I'm gonna find myself a gorgeous wife too." Whatever, they left. Now it's time for my program. "Everyone, come in!" Following his phone call, 10 slender figures strutted into the room from outside. With every single step they took, Quentin's heart shattered into another million pieces. If he knew this was going to happen, he never ever would have provoked Caspian. Early morning on the way to the company, I sniffed myself and caught a whiff of a faint floral scent. My face contorted in utter disgust. "This is all your fault. I'm covered in this weird smell. People who don't know are gonna think I love bathing in perfume." Lately, every night when Aurelia slept, she clung to me like a giant octopus. Aurelia slapped her hand right onto my neck, shaking me viciously. "You absolute bastard! You dare be disgusted by me? Are you begging to be disciplined?" I struggled wildly, yelling, "Don't go too far, all right? If you keep this up, I'm gonna fight back." The elevator doors opened. We arrived at the 19th floor of the building. Compared to the other floors, this one seemed exceptionally tranquil. There was a lot of new equipment. The air was thick with the potent smell of traditional Chinese herbs. I walked out of the elevator clutching my butt, my face radiating pure grievance. Bart proudly pointed at the pristine, organized layout. He flexed, "How is it? My efficiency is pretty hardcore, right? That guy surnamed Chen was tortured to the brink of insanity by me yesterday. From now on, whenever he sees a woman who's even slightly chubby, he's gonna want to hurl." "Oh, by the way, Mrs. Harrington from Zhenlin Real Estate just called me. She's bringing 2 friends over in a bit. Here, These are the business cards I made for you. I took the business card. It was completely black, with gold hot-stamped lettering. It only had the clinic's name and phone number. It looked low-key but incredibly premium. It was absolutely perfect for flexing. Just as I was secretly thrilled internally, a commotion came from the doorway. On this floor, aside from clinic staff, basically no one else would ever wander in. Looks like the guests have arrived. I turned my head to look. Sure enough, it was 3 women glowing with radiant health, dressed in high-end fashion, wearing ridiculously expensive jewelry on their heads and necks. I recognized one of them. It was Mrs. Harrington from Zhenlin Real Estate. The other 2 must be her friends. But they didn't look too thrilled to be here. Sister Harrington, I've never even heard of this Century Clinic. We're not sick. What are we doing here? I only came because you said we could get beauty treatments. Yeah, exactly. I didn't even go to my booked salon. That private salon is incredibly hard to get an appointment for. Mrs. Harrington comforted them. Oh, don't worry, you guys. I wouldn't have brought you here if I wasn't absolutely certain. Little Caspian, come over here. Mrs. Harrington saw me, her eyes lighting up immediately. She waved me over. Let me introduce you. This is Mrs. Davenport. We're all friends who usually hang out together. I specifically brought them here to support your grand opening. You absolutely must give me a discount. Mrs. Davenport and Mrs. Kensington saw how young I was, and their hearts instantly filled with even more doubt. I guessed exactly what they were thinking and chuckled. Don't rush, ladies! I guarantee you will be fully satisfied within an hour. I turned my head and yelled, Bart, serve the soup! 10 minutes later, 3 bowls of watermelon-flavored beauty soup were placed in front of them. I explained, the biggest difference between our clinic's beauty treatments and those outside salons is this. Salons make you look good on the outside, but you have to go frequently. And slapping all those bottles and jars on for too long is bad for your body. But we use traditional Chinese medicine to regulate your body, improving you from the inside out, making your skin naturally better and better. You only need to come once a month, and it's only $50K per session. Mrs. Davenport wasn't buying it at all. You young kids sure know how to spin a pretty tale. Anyone can brag. She went to the beauty salon 5 times a month. Every single time cost a minimum of $100K, but she had no choice but to spend that cash. Otherwise, her husband would definitely go out and sneak around. Hearing that it only cost $50K a month and required drinking a bowl of soup, of course she didn't believe it. I wasn't angry. I looked her up and down. A moment later I said, if my guess is correct, your sleep quality has been terrible lately. As soon as night hits, your body gets incredibly itchy, and no matter how much you scratch, it doesn't help. Mrs. Davenport was utterly shocked. How did you know? I continued. Dark circles under your eyes, scratch marks on your arms, tiny little bumps on your neck. You're suffering from an allergic reaction to a substance, and it's been going on for at least half a year. Mrs. Davenport was completely mind-blown, covering her mouth in shock. She was amazed by how terrifyingly sharp my eyes were. She actually did have a substance allergy. She went to the hospital for it. The doctor advised her to use fewer salon products. Otherwise, it would be extremely hard to cure, so she just kept dragging it out until now. Mrs. Harrington quickly chimed in from the side. Just drink it with peace of mind, guys. His medical skills are no joke. His base house call fee starts at $500K minimum, and there are tons of people begging him for treatment. This beauty soup is just the absolute basics. If you add acupuncture to it, the results are absolutely flawless. Seeing that Mrs. Harrington had vouched for me this hard, Mrs. Davenport and Mrs. Kensington finally dropped their suspicions. They downed the beauty soup in front of them in one gulp. They instantly felt a warm, incredibly comfortable sensation in their stomachs. I then brought out 2 small packets and placed them in front of Mrs. Davenport. This is to cure your allergy. Boil it in a pot for 2 hours and drink it while it's hot. I guarantee you'll get a solid night's sleep tonight. Since Sister Harrington introduced you, this one's on the house. If you see results, come back for the follow-up treatment. Mrs. Davenport agreed readily. Deal! If it works, I'll bring every single friend I know over here. Bart piped up at the perfect moment. He chuckled and handed out 3 business cards. Here, here, here. These are our clinic's business cards. If you need anything, just contact us. Upstairs in the top-floor CEO's office, the secretary stood to the side holding files, while Aurelia, sitting behind the desk, had her eyes glued dead straight onto the surveillance feed on her computer screen. The ballpoint pen in her hand had already been snapped clean in half. She gritted her teeth in absolute fury. This damn stinky man. He acts so fierce towards me, but calls these old hags sister with every breath. People who don't know are gonna think they're your wives. Just watch how I completely destroy you later. Meanwhile, at the Magic City Traditional Chinese Medicine Association, as my reputation had steadily grown over the years, I naturally caught the attention of the TCM Association. Right now, on the association president's desk lay a complete file of my information. Dr. Cornelius stroked his graying beard, muttering softly to himself, so he's actually Zhang Zhenhei's son. No wonder he possesses such god-tier medical skills at such a young age. Suddenly, a knock came from the door. A young girl wearing a green t-shirt pushed the door open and walked in. A voice as ethereal and sweet as a bell chimed in. Grandpa, you called for me? Dr. Cornelius handed the documents in his hand over to his granddaughter. In exactly 1 month, it will be the grand competition between the younger generation of our traditional Chinese Medicine Association and the Jiangnan and Zhejiang provinces. This young man named Caspian possesses a family-inherited acupuncture manual. His father's needle techniques were practically divine, renowned throughout the international medical community. Grandpa, are you trying to get me to recruit him as a teammate? No, although he has natural talent, he ultimately lacks proper guidance and experience. He doesn't have the qualifications to be your teammate yet. What I mean is, you will accompany me on a trip. We'll get our hands on his family's acupuncture manual and see if we can learn anything useful from it. Deep down in his heart, Dr. Cornelius actually looked down on me. He felt that I hadn't dedicated myself to researching orthodox traditional Chinese medicines, but instead wasted my brain cells on beauty and skincare. Clearly, I had strayed down the wrong path. Furthermore, catering exclusively to the rich meant my desire for wealth and fame was far too heavy. I possessed zero medical ethics. My path in medicine was destined to be short-lived. So, he figured it was better to just take my needle manual for himself, lest such legendary techniques be lost to history. The midday weather was blisteringly hot. After finishing up with work, Aurelia brought her attendant back home. Mother-in-law Serenity and Aunt Josephine were currently discussing the exact date for our official engagement. Right at that moment, a commotion erupted from outside. Can you go easy on me? Is this okay or not? I told you it was required for my work. I'm only letting you get away with this because you're a woman. Don't force me to commit domestic violence. When I go crazy, even I'm terrified of myself. While being dragged into the house by the ear by Aurelia, I was still desperately throwing out tough guy threats. Aurelia, on the other hand, couldn't care less. Go ahead and go crazy if you have the guts. My hands have been itching for a fight all day. The two of us headed upstairs back to our bedroom. The living room returned to silence. The people sitting on the sofa exchanged glances, their faces plastered with utter helplessness. Little Caspian really takes after his father. Out in the world, he fears neither heaven nor earth, and isn't afraid to provoke absolutely anyone. The only thing he's terrified of is his wife. Actually, it was also because Aurelia had such a domineering personality. 9 years ago, that girl went out alone for a trip, and came back completely transformed into this. Night fell. Mrs. Davenport, whose real name was Daphne, had a husband who ran a transportation company. The two of them had shared many hardships together. Because of extreme overwork and exhaustion over the years, Daphne's skin had deteriorated terribly. She brought out the freshly brewed herbal soup. Her husband frowned and said, "TCM doctors these days are all scammers and charlatans, just bluffing and swindling people." And you actually believe them. Sister Harrington recommended him. Besides, it didn't even cost money. If the results are bad, I just won't go next time. If something goes wrong, it's a massive clinic. It's not like they can run away. Pinching her nose, Daphne downed the bitter herbal soup in one massive gulp. The next day, her husband was jolted awake by Daphne's loud screams. She was touching the acne on her neck, exclaiming in pure, ecstatic surprise. Dr. Zhang's medicine actually worked. The acne has reduced so much, and I didn't feel itchy at all while sleeping last night. She had been tortured by these breakouts for half a year. She had seen countless doctors to no avail. Who would have thought she'd find the cure in a completely obscure, unknown clinic? Dr. Zhang was truly a medical god. Bart had just arrived at the clinic when he received a call from Daphne. Hearing that the other party was going to introduce a ton of friends over, he was so thrilled he couldn't even close his mouth. The salary I gave him was a flat 30% of the clinic's profits. The better the clinic's business, the more cash he raked in. "No problem, Mrs. Davenport. Where is your house? I'll personally deliver the follow-up medication to you right now." "What? No problem at all." After gleefully hanging up the phone, Bart suddenly remembered he had absolutely no idea how to mix prescriptions. If he just grabbed a random bottle of 6-flavor Romania pills to bluff her, the client would definitely run away. Suddenly remembering something, Bart walked over to my cabinet and rummaged around for a bit. He quickly found a cloth bundle specifically used for storing silver needles. Opening it, he found rows of neatly arranged silver needles. Underneath each needle was a tag labeled with things like bone softening, paralysis, etc. These silver needles were exclusively for my personal use. They had been tossed into a boiling cauldron of special medicinal soup and steeped for a full 49 days before they were successfully forged. Isn't the medicine right here? Meanwhile, at the Panlong Villa district, I was happily sleeping in when I was suddenly slapped awake by a brutal backhand. Terrified, I instantly bolted upright in bed. Once my brain rebooted, I glared at Aurelia next to me. "Why did you hit me?" Aurelia's face was slightly pale. Her eyes were glued dead straight toward the doorway. Trembling with fear, she pointed her finger. My heart skipped a beat. "There's actually something in this world that terrifies this woman?" I turned my head to look at the door, and my entire body instantly froze solid. Every ounce of sleepiness in my brain evaporated into thin air. I saw that at the bedroom doorway, at some unknown point in time, 2 massive, vibrant green snakes had appeared. They were slithering around the room at an agonizingly slow pace, flicking their forked tongues as they crawled. These snakes were at least 1.6 meters long. Definitely fully grown adults. Even though Aurelia was usually cold, aloof, and fiercely independent, when faced with something she was terrified of, she was just like any other normal girl. She was exceptionally terrified of snakes, caterpillars, and other squishy, legless creatures. She tried to grab the hem of my shirt, but her hand grasped nothing but empty air. Only then did she realize I had already completely retreated under the blankets. Unable to hold back, Aurelia landed a vicious kick right on my butt. "Aren't you a doctor? You've even touched dead bodies. How can you be afraid of snakes? Medical schools have anatomy classes where we dissect corpses, and I graduated from the absolute best medical academy in the Magic City," I explained with extreme guilt. "Dissecting corpses is one thing. These snakes are alive and literally crawling around. Who wouldn't be terrified seeing these things? I'm an absolute expert at making snake-based medicine, but catching them? Absolutely not, especially since the color of these snakes looks super creepy. If I get bitten and don't get immediate rescue, I'll be going straight to meet my maker." Feeling that simply hiding under the blankets wasn't safe enough, I quickly wiggled my way straight into Aurelia's embrace, hugging her tiny waist for dear life. "Wifey, you're so strong and amazing, you have to protect me." Invisible black lines popped up all over Aurelia's forehead. If she wasn't terrified of snakes, would she have bothered waking me up? She would have turned these things into snake soup ages ago. It was currently the peak of summer, naturally the season for snakes to roam about. These two snakes probably crawled in through the balcony window. Usually for ventilation, Aurelia never closed the balcony windows. Who would have thought it would attract two massive scaly treasures? Having figured this out, she quickly pulled out her phone to call her bodyguards, only to receive the tragic news that the two bodyguards had been dragged off to the morning market by her mother. Mrs. Gable had tagged along too. So right now in this massive villa, it was just the two of us, staring at each other with wide eyes, absolutely devoid of any countermeasures. Normally, snakes won't actively attack humans. The only solution was to wait for the bodyguards to return. I was filled with profound regret. If I had known, I would have brought my silver needles home yesterday. Otherwise, with two swift throws, these snakes would have been chilling in the afterlife by now. I helplessly hugged my wifey's tiny waist and rubbed my face against her. "Wifey, in my next life, I still want to be with you." Aurelia remained completely emotionless. "If you don't shut your mouth right now, I will literally throw you out there to feed the snakes." At this moment, urgent footsteps echoed from outside the door, accompanied by a childish, high-pitched voice. "Big bad demon brother, big bad demon sister, Pixie is here to play with you guys." Our faces instantly morphed into masks of sheer panic. "Don't come in," but the words left our mouths a second too late. The bedroom door was pushed open. Pixie's sudden appearance instantly drew the attention of the two green snakes. The beautifully chubby little girl looked at the two massive green snakes slithering toward her feet and froze for a second. The very next second, an earth-shattering wail echoed throughout the entire villa, followed closely by the sound of rapid, heavy footsteps and the booming voice of Uncle Gideon, laced with frantic panic. "My sweet daughter, what happened to you?" Half an hour later, General Gideon, wearing an apron, picked up his daughter who was happily munching on snake soup. He reached out, rubbed her head, and smiled with infinite doting. "How is it, Pixie? Is the snake soup yummy?" "Super yummy." Pixie held her spoon, eagerly eating the snake soup. Her little face was a portrait of absolute satisfaction. Mouthful after mouthful, she stuffed her cheeks until they bulged like a chipmunk's. Meanwhile, I had my head bowed, kneeling squarely on a computer keyboard. I pleaded with an incredibly aggrieved tone. "Wifey, I've been kneeling for so long, I truly know my mistake now. Please just spare me this one time." Exactly. From the very beginning, I was completely acting. My fear of snakes was genuine, but that didn't mean I couldn't recognize the species of the snake. As a fully qualified TCM doctor, snakes are literally medicinal ingredients. Different snake skins have entirely different efficacies. Aurelia, wearing slippers, lifted her foot and stepped right on my face. Folding her arms, she let out a cold snort. "You still want to get up? Keep dreaming. If you don't kneel for a full 2.5 hours today, don't even think about getting up." When she found out I was deliberately trying to watch her make a fool of herself, Aurelia was so furious her teeth nearly shattered. This guy was seriously one missed beating away from trying to ascend to heaven. He actually dared to act in front of her. And the worst part was, she actually fell for it. If she didn't train him properly now, what would happen in the future? Because of the two uninvited scaly guests at home, I arrived at the clinic much later than usual. Little Pixie had already been handed over to Mrs. Gable, who came home early. As soon as I walked into the clinic, I saw two people sitting in the waiting area. Bart quickly scurried over to me and whispered, "That's the president of our Magic City Traditional Chinese Medicine Association, Dr. Cornelius." The girl next to him is his granddaughter, Penelope. She's about the same age as you. They specifically came here looking for you. You didn't somehow manage to offend them, did you? Before I could even speak, Dr. Cornelius had already spotted me. He stood up and walked over. Extending his hand, he smiled. "Little friend Caspian, you have even more aura than your father did when he was young. You knew my dad." However, considering the other party was the president of the TCM Association, it made sense that he had interacted with my dad. I just had no idea why he had suddenly popped up here. Before I could answer him, Penelope, standing to the side, spoke up first. What rank have you reached in your TCM certification? Unranked, I replied casually. I honestly couldn't care less about what rank or level I was. My life goal was definitely not to become some world-renowned medical god. I was only interested in cold, hard cash. Penelope's face was instantly plastered with absolute disdain. She didn't bother asking anything else. An unranked TCM doctor wasn't worth wasting another brain cell on. The three of us returned to the sofa and sat down. Dr. Cornelius pulled me into a long chat about stories of my father from back in the day. It looked like a casual chat, but he was actually trying to butter me up. I thought to myself, he definitely came here solely for the Zhang family's heirloom needle manual. So I directly cut him off. Dr. Cornelius, you must be here for the Zhang family's 9 needles, correct? Sure enough. He paused for a second, then chuckled. Little friend Caspian is truly perceptive. I am indeed here for your Zhang family's needle manual. In 1 month, regional associations will be holding a ranking tournament. This concerns the ultimate honor of our Magic City Association. When your father was alive, he successfully defended our title multiple times. We hope that this time, Penelope can also rely on your needle manual to win glory for us. Hearing this, I laughed mockingly in my head, spouting all these high-sounding words about honor and glory. In reality, he just wanted to completely mooch my family's needle manual for free. I pretended to look deeply troubled. Dr. Cornelius, my clinic here has just started up. I'm currently lacking quite a few rare medicinal ingredients. Dr. Cornelius naturally understood exactly what I was implying. He pondered internally. Since I can't get it for free, I guess I have no choice but to spend some cash. Sigh, little friend Caspian. It's not that I don't want to give you the ingredients. But nowadays, all the premium herbs are being bought out by Japan and Korea. I can only offer 10 million in cash. You can go buy them yourself. How about that? I cursed the old geezer in my head. 10 million might look like a lot, but when it comes to truly aged, premium medicinal herbs, that would barely buy you the dirt on the roots. Trying to use a measly 10 million to exchange for a legendary needle manual? He was treating me like an absolute moron. Since that's the case, then I won't hold back either. 2 billion. Not a single penny less? 2 billion. Why don't you just go rob a bank? Penelope immediately shrieked. I didn't back down an inch. This is a family heirloom needle manual. My father used it to become famous across the international medical community. If I genuinely wanted to sell it, I wouldn't have to worry about finding buyers willing to pay top dollar. Dr. Cornelius's face turned incredibly ugly. This old man can offer 100 million at most, plus a land deed worth 300 million. Before I could open my mouth, he added, little friend Caspian, the places where you can actually utilize your needle techniques are quite limited. And every single clinic in this entire Magic City falls under the jurisdiction of my association. Hearing this, it had already escalated into a naked, blatant threat. I let out a cold snort. 1 billion plus the land deed. Otherwise, if I can't survive in the Magic City, worst case scenario, I'll just pack up and go somewhere else. Finally, Dr. Cornelius sighed in helplessness. 1 billion it is then. I will have the land deed sent over this afternoon. Before leaving, he added one last comment. Little friend Caspian, you truly have guts. You have a lot of your father's style. I chuckled. You flatter me. This kid is still far, far behind compared to you, Dr. Cornelius. Once the funds hit my account, the needle manual will naturally be presented to you. Dr. Cornelius pulled his granddaughter and left. Before leaving, Penelope let out a cold, disgusted snort. Leaving a needle manual in the hands of someone like you, whose eyes are completely blinded by money, is a complete and utter waste of heavenly treasures, Bart muttered in dissatisfaction. Hey, watch how you speak. He ran over to my side and asked in a hushed whisper, are you really going to sell the needle manual? I smiled effortlessly. If I sell it, I sell it. It's not like they can actually learn it anyway. In reality, the Zhang family's 9 needles was profoundly deep and complex. Without my Zhang family's exclusive secret core principles, they could ultimately only learn a tiny bit of superficial fluff. They would never be able to penetrate its true essence. Compared to that, getting 1 billion in cash and a 300 million land deed was an absolutely massive steal. Just as I was happily celebrating internally, a large crowd of people flooded into the clinic entrance. Walking at the very front was Mrs. Davenport, whom I had met yesterday, she said with fiery enthusiasm. Dr. Zhang, I've brought you a ton of business, I hurriedly yelled out. Bart, serve the soup! Out of the 13 people Mrs. Davenport brought, 10 were here for the beauty treatment. The remaining 3, like Mrs. Davenport herself, had allergies. Every single one of them was a wealthy patron who didn't lack cash. 1 person equals 1 bowl of 50k beauty soup. The clinic instantly raked in a cool 650,000. After sending off Mrs. Davenport and her crew, my mood was absolutely phenomenal. I took the elevator up to the top floor. I pushed open the door to the CEO's office and casually shouted, Little Aurelia, serve your granddaddy Caspian some tea. The employee who was currently reporting their work stared at me in absolute shock, muttering internally, this Caspian guy's guts are astronomically huge. Is he not afraid of being murdered by CEO Shen? Aurelia simply stated coldly, Get out. The employee didn't dare linger for a millisecond. They dropped their proposal and bolted like lightning. Before leaving, they didn't forget to carefully shut the door. Only me and Aurelia were left in the room. She pointed a finger at the floor and sneered. "Come here, kneel!" I whipped out a bank card and tossed it over. "There's 1 million in there! You kneel! Are you kidding me?" I'm a guy with serious financial backing now. Tomorrow I'll have 1 billion hitting my account. My confidence was currently overflowing. Unexpectedly, Aurelia pulled out a pair of scissors, a bottle of water, and a sausage from her cabinet. Snip! The sausage was brutally cut cleanly in half. I instantly felt a phantom draft down south. I dropped to my knees faster than the speed of light. "Wifey, I was wrong!" Aurelia put away the scissors with immense satisfaction. She sneered. "Acting tough in front of others is one thing, but acting tough in front of me? I'll play you to death. Hurry up! Hand over all the little private stash you just earned." My eyes immediately bugged out. "On what grounds? I earned this with my own blood, sweat, and tears," Aurelia said coldly. "Do you have absolutely zero self-awareness of your own attitude just now? With a mere 1 million, you dared to tell me to kneel. If I let you have 100 million, wouldn't you try to flip the very heavens upside down?" I mustered up my courage and whispered, "And what if I don't give it to you?" 10 minutes later, watching the freshly earned cash get transferred away, leaving me with a measly 500K allowance, I wanted to cry but lacked the tears. If I had known, I wouldn't have tried to flex. Now the money I finally got my hands on had sprouted wings and flown away. However, thinking about the 1 billion arriving tomorrow, my mood instantly rebalanced itself. After this harsh lesson, I need to be way more careful in the future. As a person, you can't be too arrogant and floaty. I need to secretly accumulate power in the shadows and then brutally step this stinky woman under my feet. If Aurelia knew what I was plotting in my head right now, she'd probably come over and deliver 2 more vicious kicks. To avoid any unexpected plot twists in the long night, Dr. Cornelius delivered the 1 billion and the land deed to me that very afternoon, and as promised, he successfully obtained the Zhang family's 9 needles. On the drive back, Dr. Cornelius watched his granddaughter intently studying the needle manual. He stroked his beard and laughed. Back in the day, Caspian's father relied entirely on these needle techniques to stand at the absolute pinnacle of the medical world. Countless people begged him for treatment. "Penelope, you must study this diligently." However, Penelope frowned and said, "Grandpa, I feel like this needle manual is incomplete. It only records how to apply the techniques, but there's no record of the foundational methods of inserting the needles." Dr. Cornelius hurriedly snatched the manual back and examined it closely. He couldn't believe the item he just spent 1.3 billion total value on was incomplete. But after checking carefully, every single page was perfectly preserved and intact. He had no choice but to comfort her. It is a peerless, legendary needle technique after all. It's perfectly normal for it to be a bit bizarre and profound. Let's head back and research it first. Maybe the true profound secrets are hidden within. In the afternoon, I was wearing sunglasses, holding a stick of candied hawthorn, tanghulu, in my hand, strolling through the Magic City snack street with Aurelia. She was also wearing sunglasses, looking left and right. Whenever a street snack caught her eye, she would drag me over. Her cheeks were stuffed and bulging, eating with absolute joyous delight. Suddenly, a cotton candy stall grabbed my attention, not because of the cotton candy itself, but because of the stall owner. It was actually Valeria. Why on earth would she be here setting up a street stall? I pulled out my phone and did a quick search on Baidu. Sure enough, I saw the news. Longteng Group withdraws investment, Genesis boss goes bankrupt, Reginald arrested for tax evasion, etc. Aurelia noticed me standing there like a statue. Following my line of sight, she let out a cold snort, turned around, and started walking toward the crossroad. I hurriedly reached out to grab her, but she shook me off. "Don't touch me. Since you clearly still like her in your heart, go chase her. I'll grant you too your happy ending." Great. This high and mighty, aloof ice queen had just morphed into a giant jealous vinegar jar. I quickly tried to explain. "Babe, wait, listen to me explain. I was literally just curious about why she was here. I absolutely do not have any other intentions. I swear, I'm not listening. I truly only love you and you alone. I can't hear you." Left with no other option, I forcefully grabbed her, yanked her straight into my embrace, and kissed her with aggressive dominance, using my actions to prove my absolute loyalty. Aurelia's phoenix eyes widened slightly. She clearly hadn't expected me to kiss her right there on the street. This bad guy? Evening. The sun was setting in the west. I covered my mouth as I arrived home, feeling a fiery, tearing pain at the corner of my lips. I grumbled internally with sheer dissatisfaction. "Are you secretly a dog? Why did you have to bite me while things were going perfectly fine?" Because of getting bitten during the kiss, I was so angry that I didn't go to Aurelia's room that night. Instead, I returned to my own room. I double-locked the door and the windows. I even checked under the bed to make sure absolutely no one was there. To prevent a midnight ambush, I literally inspected every single corner of the room. Only after confirming it was completely empty did I lie down. I can finally get a good night's sleep tonight, right? The lights clicked off. The room descended into silence. I quickly drifted off into a deep, heavy slumber, completely unaware that danger had already quietly descended. A corner panel of the ceiling was silently lifted. A highly agile figure dropped down. Because it was the second floor, the ceilings were all made of wood. To accommodate wiring, spaces were often left in the corners that could be opened, and my room just so happened to connect directly to the master bedroom through this crawl space. Aurelia stood barefoot to the side, looking at me sleeping soundly on the bed. The corner of her mouth curled into a highly wicked, eerie smile. She lifted the blanket and shimmied her way in. You want to guard against me? Then tonight I absolutely insist on sleeping with you. Soon an earth-shattering, apocalyptic battle commenced beneath the covers. Accompanied by the crisp sound of clapping hands, the battle concluded. The room returned to absolute silence. Early the next morning, sporting massive dark circles under my eyes, I arrived at the clinic. I cursed my own miscalculation internally. I never imagined that crazy woman would actually crawl through the ceiling panel, and directly gave me a freezing, heart-stopping shock. Next time I definitely need to seal that ceiling panel shut. There were already quite a few wealthy society ladies waiting in the clinic. After drinking their beauty soup, they left one by one. After scrubbing the pots clean, Bart walked over to my side and sighed. I feel like we didn't open a medical clinic. We opened a beauty salon. Basically, no one comes here to actually treat illnesses. I replied nonchalantly. It doesn't matter whether the people who come want medical treatment or not. Our main goal is just to make bank. Maintaining the status quo is perfectly fine. The entire morning passed in a blur of busyness. Lunchtime arrived. The cafeteria was packed wall-to-wall with people. The aroma of food filled the air. Aurelia and I sat shoulder to shoulder. I casually suggested, "Little Aurelia, let's go back to the cinema another day. I'll book out the entire theater directly and recommend a really good horror movie for you." Sure, I thought to myself wickedly. They'll pick an internationally banned horror film to scare the living daylights out of her. When the time comes, I absolutely must record the exact moment she gets terrified and dives into my arms. Little did I know at the time, Aurelia was actually plotting the exact same thing. She was planning to hire Brutus and Titus to dress up as robbers to terrify me, so she could collect and cherish the embarrassing footage of me forever. Aurelia and I each had our own secret, diabolical schemes playing in our heads, both of us sporting highly suspicious grins. Sitting nearby, Bart suddenly felt a chilling draft down his spine. He looked left and right but saw absolutely nothing. After seeing the bizarre, creepy smiles plastered on our faces, he silently picked up his tray and moved further away. Grinning like idiots in broad daylight? Could they have gone insane? I better keep my distance, lest stupidity be contagious. Right at that moment, a massive commotion erupted from the cafeteria entrance. It instantly drew everyone's attention. A young man was walking straight toward my direction, dressed in a pristine, sharp white suit, holding a massive bouquet of roses, paired with an astronomically expensive watch on his wrist and an incredibly handsome face. He perfectly fit the ultimate archetype of a tall, rich, and handsome Ashton. The white-suited young man stopped in his tracks. His eyes locked dead onto Aurelia. His gaze was melting with soft affection. "Aurelia, long time no see. You're still as breathtakingly beautiful as ever. Like the most dazzling flower in the entire world. I've returned from studying abroad. This time I came back specifically to marry you. Marry me." He dropped to one knee and presented the bouquet of flowers. His expression was incredibly sincere and earnest. At this exact moment, every single employee in the entire cafeteria stared blankly at the scene, and then they all turned to look at me, as if they could physically see a vibrantly glowing green hat, symbol of being cuckolded, hovering right above my head. "Old Jiang, stay calm. Don't be impulsive. We live in a lawful society now. You can't just start throwing hands." Bart was desperately using his entire body weight to pin me down, preventing me from going berserk. The surrounding employees looked at it like it was completely normal. After all, my wife was literally being proposed to right in front of my face, with roses and poetic declarations of love. If any man could tolerate this, he might as well just become an imperial eunuch. The rich kid Ashton looked at me with deep confusion. Then he turned and asked Aurelia, "Who is this guy?" Aurelia replied with freezing coldness, "My husband. Furthermore, I don't recall ever giving you permission to call me Aurelia." After saying that, she went right back to eating her food with a completely blank expression. Ashton's eyes widened in horror. He stumbled back 2 steps, his heart bursting with blazing fury. "Husband?" He couldn't believe his ears. He went abroad for 3 years, and the goddess he loved had actually gotten married? The secretary hurriedly called over several heavily muscled male employees, just to prevent Ashton and me from getting into a physical brawl. She recognized the rich kid. He was the famous young master of the Gao family in the Magic City. He was college classmates with Aurelia. He fiercely pursued her during university, but his family arranged for him to go abroad for further studies, so he was forced to leave. Who would have thought he'd actually come back now? However, even though Ashton had a somewhat flamboyant vibe, he was actually a relatively honorable and straightforward guy. Unlike the other sleazy guys who pursued Aurelia, who constantly harassed her or secretly stalked her. Otherwise, they would have been beaten so badly by the 2 bodyguards they'd be searching the floor for their teeth. Ashton and I glared at each other like vicious wolves. It wasn't until Brutus and Titus showed up cracking their knuckles that we finally sat back down in our seats obediently. Aurelia swept her gaze over the crowd of employees. Her voice dropped several degrees in temperature. What are you all standing around watching? If you don't want a lunch break, then we'll just cancel it permanently from now on. Once you finish eating, get straight back to work. The employees were so terrified they didn't even finish their food. They hurriedly scrambled out of the cafeteria like a swarm of bees. Ashton shot me a dirty look and let out a cold snort. I will absolutely never acknowledge you. If you have the guts, let's compete in a match. Why on earth should I compete with you? Do I actually gain anything from getting your acknowledgement? My incredibly calm and logical response completely stunned Ashton. Unwilling to give up, he asked, then what do I have to do to make you agree to compete? What are you good at? I continued to ask. Singing, dancing, and basketball. Furthermore, I'm a PhD student from a prestigious overseas university. He was just getting to the good part, but I rudely cut him off. Say no more. We will compete in basketball. Whoever scores the most points wins. 1 ball is worth 1 million. Whoever surrenders first loses. How about it? Ashton agreed instantly. But he wasn't stupid either. He could only use his own pocket money. Do you even have that much cash? I chuckled gleefully and pulled out a diamond bank card. This card has 1 billion in it. It's all my own private property. If you don't believe me, you can go check the balance yourself. Expectedly, Aurelia reached out and snatched the card right out of my hand. 1 billion, huh? Since you've earned so much, I guess I'll increase your allowance by 50K this month. 1 million per shot is more than enough for you to use. I stared at her with a face full of sheer, unadulterated dumbfoundedness. This stinky woman is seriously, the match began. Ashton taunted me with brimming overconfidence. In 1 minute, I'll score the first point. I'll make you realize just how utterly stupid it is to challenge me in basketball. However, the moment those words left his mouth, I had already effortlessly sunk a three-pointer, leaving him standing there with a face full of absolute shock. Bart blew the whistle with intense excitement. Caspian scores 1 point. Ashton felt a slight wave of panic in his heart. But seeing Aurelia standing on the sidelines, he was instantly refilled with blazing fighting spirit. He dribbled the ball and charged fiercely toward the backboard. I, however, stealthily slipped out a silver needle. Under the watchful eyes of everyone present, Ashton executed a flawless crossover dribble, bypassing me completely. But just as he leaped into the air, preparing for a devastating slam dunk, his body suddenly lost all control. He crashed heavily onto the court. The ball bounced out of bounds. He was completely stunned. The next several rounds were effortlessly taken down by me. At this point, Ashton began to feel an inexplicable, creeping exhaustion in his body. He began to severely doubt his own existence. Finally, the score locked in at 16-0. Ashton, covered in dust and looking utterly defeated, surrendered. He pulled out a bank card and handed it to me. His heart was filled with genuine admiration. I acknowledge you as a brother. If you ever run into trouble in the future, just come find me. I laughed and said, well, I guess I made a decent profit today too, but the cash I literally just got my hands on, before it even had time to warm up my pocket, was ruthlessly confiscated by Aurelia once again. She patted my head with immense satisfaction. Not bad. You've grown up. You actually know how to subsidize the household expenses now. I didn't dote on you in vain. I thought in my head with utter helplessness. Wives spending money is perfectly justified by the laws of heaven and earth. I'll just pretend I was feeding a stray dog. Before Ashton left, he made sure to warn me. Caspian, you need to be extremely careful of a guy named Lucius. He also likes Aurelia. He's not straightforward and honorable like me. He'll use absolutely any dirty, underhanded method necessary to achieve his goals. In the past, he actually made Aurelia cry. I got into a massive fist fight with him over that incident. As a result, my dad shipped me off overseas. He made Aurelia cry? I froze on the spot. Aurelia was such an incredibly strong and resilient person. There were very, very few things in this world that could actually make her cry. A blazing inferno of rage instantly erupted in my chest. What's this Lucius guy's background? Ashton explained. He's the second young master of the Liang family from the capital, Shangjing. He couldn't compete with his older brother for the inheritance, so he ran off to the Magic City to throw his weight around. His dad is blood brothers with the mayor. Otherwise, I would have beaten the living daylights out of him ages ago. If you want to dig up more info on him, you can go find Monty. He has a massive grudge against Lucius. He knows a lot more. After saying his piece, he drove off. He was probably going to get a severe beating from his old man when he got home. I stood in place, deep in thought. Aurelia suddenly walked up to my side. She asked softly, "What were you two whispering about just now?" "Oh, nothing much. Ashton said he wanted to treat me to a foot wash and massage. I was just pondering which bathhouse has the prettiest girls in black silk stockings." Aurelia's face instantly darkened like a thundercloud. She slapped her hand onto my neck and said with freezing coldness, "Why waste the money? I'll massage you myself." I hurriedly shot a frantic look at Bart. "Bart, save me!" Bart instantly got the message. He rubbed his hands together and said to the secretary, "Miss, they have some private marital affairs to attend to. Let's get out of here first. I don't know if you're free tonight, but I'd love to treat you to dinner." The secretary completely ignored him. She turned and walked straight into the elevator. Bart chased after her, continuing his relentless pursuit. I cursed internally. This absolute traitor. 2 days later, at the Magic City airport, Lucius and his butler walked out of the terminal. He spat on the ground with a face full of intense dissatisfaction and cursed. Damn it! With such a massive family fortune, they only left me a garbage branch company to manage, and they still use that condescending elder tone to lecture me. On what grounds? The butler reminded him carefully. Young master, this is a public place. Please mind your words. Although Lucius was deeply frustrated internally, he still obediently shut his mouth. If he previously still possessed a sliver of qualification to compete for the inheritance, this trip back to the capital meant his qualifications were completely and utterly revoked, unless his older brother conveniently dropped dead. He desperately needed to find a powerful, influential ally, and Aurelia from the Shen family was an exceptionally perfect choice. He had started plotting to get close to her many years ago. Unfortunately, progress was incredibly slow. Now he was running out of time. Uncle Quincy, go investigate exactly what has happened in the Magic City over this past month, and specifically, track Aurelia's movements. Understood, young master. Meanwhile, I was smiling warmly as I looked at Monty. Brother Monty, let me toast you a glass. I invited you here today because I want to understand a few things. I smiled and offered him a cocktail. Monty, who was currently tied up like a festive Christmas ham, had veins bulging furiously on his forehead. He roared angrily, "You literally kidnapped me without saying a single word, and you call this an invitation? I was literally in the middle of a date with a hot girl, and your 2 bastard bodyguards just knocked me out and dragged me here. At the time, the entire street was staring right at me. Ever since I crossed paths with you, you absolute harbinger of doom, I haven't had a single day of good luck." Brutus and Titus stood silently behind Monty, saying absolutely nothing. Don't be so anxious, young Master Wu. My attitude was incredibly sincere. This point is absolutely beyond doubt. Sincere my ass! Monty was being driven to the brink of insanity. He previously thought he was arrogant and thick-skinned. He never imagined he'd meet someone whose skin was infinitely thicker than a bank vault door. I scratched my head. Honestly, I just wanted to ask you a little bit about Aurelia and that guy Lucius. The moment Lucius's name was dropped, Monty instantly quieted down. After struggling internally for a brief moment, he spoke rapidly. During university, Aurelia had a best friend named Harper. Lucius was pursuing Aurelia and used Harper to threaten her. Harper was tortured into a vegetative state by Lucius. She's still lying in a hospital right now. I was utterly shocked. Such a massive crime and no one did anything? You need solid evidence for things like that. That rat Lucius would never get his own hands dirty. He bribed some street thugs to do the dirty work. In the end, Aurelia sent all those thugs to prison, sentenced to life without parole. But Harper is an orphan. You know how the world works. I completely understood. For someone as strong as Aurelia, realizing her absolute best friend's entire life was destroyed entirely because of her, just how unimaginably heartbroken and despairing must she have been. Monty looked at the freezing, murderous intent radiating from my eyes, and couldn't help but shrink his neck in terror. He secretly rejoiced that he hadn't completely offended me. This was absolutely not a look a normal human being should possess. In his heart, he inexplicably felt a wave of sympathy for Lucius. Meeting a lunatic like me, Aurelia might play by the rules and look for evidence. But me? Absolutely not guaranteed. I don't care about face, and my methods have zero bottom lines. I picked up a small knife and sliced the hemp ropes binding Monty. I asked casually, "Oh, by the way, I heard from that short, rich kid that you and Lucius have a massive grudge. What happened there?" Monty froze for a second. Then he snapped back to reality. "Back in the day, huh? He and I were known as the 2 great playboys of the Magic City. Once, to settle who was the ultimate boss, we agreed to a one-on-one duel. But the result? That bastard actually called a whole gang to jump me." Hearing this, I couldn't help but say, "That's absolutely disgusting." Monty angrily rubbed his sore arms and said furiously, "Let me go! See you next time!" Monty stormed off, fuming with rage. He swore to the heavens that from now on he would never leave his house without a small army of bodyguards. Who knows when I might suddenly get a whim and tie him up again? Watching Monty walk far away, I gleefully threw my arms around Brutus and Titus's necks. "Brothers, let's keep today's little operation a secret from Aurelia, okay? Later, I'll take you guys to the bathhouse to experience the high life." Titus patted his chest confidently. "Don't worry, we're all brothers here." Half an hour later, inside the CEO's office at the Century Tower. "And that's exactly how it happened, miss." Titus relayed every single detail of what had just occurred directly to Aurelia, completely ignoring my glare, which was practically screaming, "You traitor!" Aurelia stared at me coldly for a long moment. Then she stood up and walked toward the door. "Follow me." After driving around the city for a while, we finally arrived at a secluded, obscure little clinic. A middle-aged doctor was standing at the clinic entrance. "How is her condition?" "Still no changes. The chances of her ever waking up are microscopically slim." The middle-aged doctor sighed helplessly. Following Aurelia to the second floor, I saw a 100-square-meter room. Various high-tech medical machines surrounded a girl lying on a hospital bed. Her face was exquisite but deathly pale. Her eyes were tightly shut. She looked like a sleeping beauty trapped in an eternal slumber. Take a look at her. I've sought out countless famous doctors, but absolutely no one has a solution. Aurelia let out a heavy sigh. I sat on the edge of the bed next to the girl. I picked up her icy cold hand and began to check her pulse. A few short minutes later, I wiped the sweat from my forehead and said, her brain stem and cerebral cortex have not suffered permanent physical destruction. Her foundational vitals are still okay. The middle-aged doctor asked Aurelia in a shocked whisper, did this gentleman understand Miss Harper's condition beforehand? Aurelia shook her head. The doctor was instantly utterly astounded. I pulled out a silver needle. Pay close attention to her pulse reaction. Although it was incredibly faint, there was indeed a reaction. This gave me a solid baseline of confidence. Do you have pen and paper? I turned and asked the doctor. The middle-aged doctor hurriedly handed over a ballpoint pen and a notepad. I rapidly scribbled down 2 prescriptions. Follow these 2 prescriptions. Feed her a very small amount of the medicinal soup every single day. Remember, absolutely do not overfeed her. The doctor took one look at the prescriptions and instantly understood their mechanism. He nodded in agreement. Understood. Administer these 2 prescriptions for 1 month first. I will return for a follow-up consultation in exactly 1 month. Aurelia asked, with intense curiosity. How much confidence do you have? I leaned close to her ear mysteriously and whispered, take a guess. Aurelia smiled softly, but suddenly she raised her hand and delivered a devastatingly heavy slap right to my butt. You violent shrew, what are you doing? What did you just call me? Aurelia glared at me with absolute 0 degrees. Wifey, I'm not arrogant anymore. I'm grounded. I hurriedly admitted defeat, rubbing my stinging butt and mumbling complaints. However, Aurelia wasn't a completely unreasonable tyrant either. She directly transferred 10 million in pocket money to my account as a glorious reward. On the drive home that afternoon, looking at Aurelia sitting in the passenger seat scrolling through online shopping apps, I curled my lip and complained, Wifey, I've realized I don't think I like you as much as I used to. Look at yourself. You're nothing like the sugar mommies in the novels. They literally buy whatever the male lead wants. Aurelia pondered this deeply for a second. That actually makes some sense, right? Exactly. I was thrilled. I quickly struck while the iron was hot. You really need to reflect on yourself profoundly. I'm not asking you to serve me hand and foot, but you could at least change your attitude a little bit, right? Aurelia replied flatly. No need to change. I'll just stop treating you as my husband. Problem solved. I froze. I completely failed to compute what she meant. Then what are you going to treat me as? That way I won't have to care about your feelings at all. For dinner that night, Mrs. Gable specifically prepared hot pot. The dipping sauce was her own secret recipe. We could add whatever ingredients we wanted. Steak, chicken breast, chicken wings. The fridge was fully stocked with everything imaginable. I gorged myself with absolute delight. Looking at Aurelia, who was still looking down and tapping away on her phone, I asked in confusion, You've been staring at your phone ever since the car ride back. What's so complicated to buy? Couples pajamas, the cute ones. I haven't picked the perfect one yet. Ah, got it. Aurelia shoved her phone screen right up to my face. She proudly pointed at a bear-themed onesie pajama on the screen. Look, this would look incredibly adorable on you. I took exactly 1 glance at it and replied with absolute deadpan seriousness. Even if you beat me to death, I will never wear this monstrosity to sleep. The smile completely vanished from Aurelia's face. She lowered her head and went back to online shopping. Since you don't like it, then forget it. Let me see if I can find a durian made entirely of steel spikes. Kneeling on that should feel fantastic, and it's highly durable. I immediately reversed my stance at the speed of light. Actually, I think the pajama you just showed me is absolutely stunning. I love it with all my heart. Please, I beg you, you absolutely must buy it for me to sleep in. Aurelia chuckled. At least you know what's good for you. She decisively saved the picture and sent it to her secretary. The quality of pajamas bought online is terrible. Custom-tailored fabrics are much more comfortable. Even though it costs a bit more cash, it's just small change. I'll just extort the money back from him in a couple of days. She suddenly lowered her voice and said, If you can actually make Harper wake up, I'll agree to 1 condition of yours. Absolutely any condition. I didn't quite catch that. I blinked in confusion. What did you say? Just eat your food. Aurelia shot me a highly annoyed glare. The next day, as soon as I arrived at the clinic, a massive army of wealthy society ladies swarmed the entrance, all thanks to the tireless promotional efforts of Mrs. Harrington and Mrs. Davenport. The news had spread like wildfire through the Magic City's high society circles. The Century Clinic was officially famous. Dr. Zhang, please take a look at my lower back. It's been so sore and aching lately. The medicine the hospital prescribed is completely useless. Please lie down. I'll treat it for you right now. Bart, who was acting as the cashier, was trembling with excitement as he calculated the profits. Muttering endlessly to himself, Ha ha ha, we're filthy rich now. Just the pure net profit alone will easily top 10 million every single month. By the time we finally finished dealing with the rush, it was past 9 a.m. Bart grabbed his car keys, preparing to go out and procure more medicinal herbs. He basically handled all the miscellaneous chores for the clinic. Since he was earning massive bank, he was highly motivated to put in the physical labor. I headed up to Aurelia's office. I lay down on the sofa to rest and booted up a mobile game. While the secretary was reporting her work, the office phone suddenly rang. Yes, I understand. She then turned to Aurelia and reported with a helpless expression. Lucius is here again. He came by yesterday afternoon, but you weren't here. He came back again today. I was just starting up my game match. I immediately perked my ears up. Hearing that name, a deep wave of disgust welled up inside Aurelia. She said coldly, "Have Brutus and Titus bring him up here. I'd love to see exactly what he thinks he's going to do." I also followed her out of the office. I'm gonna go downstairs to grab something, I thought maliciously in my head. This piece of trash bullied my wife, and now he actually dares to deliver himself right to our doorstep? He's literally begging for death. Meanwhile, at a cafe in the Magic City, Ashton, who had just been ungrounded, invited Monty out to meet. Ashton said with intense excitement, "I just got some intel. That bastard Lucius went to the Century Tower to cause trouble for Caspian. Should we go help? The enemy of my enemy is my friend." Monty took a slow sip of his coffee and said with absolute disdain, "Who the hell is friends with that guy surnamed Zhang? Do you know he literally ordered his guys to kidnap me off the street in broad daylight yesterday? Neither of those two are good people." Ashton winked and nudged him. "Don't tell me you don't want to teach Lucius a lesson? You got beaten up back in the day and ended up getting shipped overseas because of it. I've kept that grudge burning in my heart this whole time." Monty let out a cold laugh. "Do you honestly think Caspian is a pushover? I did a background check on him last night, and I found out that back in university, he offended the son of a local gang boss. The guy brought a crew to mess with Caspian. The result? Every single one of them was permanently crippled, and the doctors couldn't find a single shred of medical evidence of foul play. Is that magical or what?" Ashton was utterly shocked. "He's that terrifying?" Monty continued. "Everyone knows you should never mess with doctors, especially a medical god who basically wields black magic. He can cripple you without anyone ever knowing how. That is the ultimate terror." A wave of profound reverence instantly washed over Ashton. "I need to go formally acknowledge him as my master." Under the escort of Brutus and Titus, Lucius swaggered into the CEO's office with an incredibly arrogant, strutting walk. His gaze locked onto me, currently playing games on the sofa. He walked forward, the corner of his mouth curling into a sneer of pure contempt. "So you're the little pet dog the Shen family is keeping?" The moment those words dropped, the atmosphere in the office instantly froze solid. I, however, replied with absolute deadpan seriousness. "To be precise, I am little Aurelia's pet, but honestly, I feel like I'm the one keeping her. She just loves extorting all my private stash of money." The corner of Lucius's mouth twitched violently. He felt an overwhelming sense of powerlessness, like punching a giant ball of cotton. Would a normal human being ever openly admit to being a pet dog? However, this just made him look down on me even more. He continued without holding back any insults. "I heard that while I was gone, Aurelia found herself a gigolo. On my way here, I was actually anticipating how formidable you might be. Now I see you're just a pathetic little clown jumping around, a trashy orphan with no father or mother." Lucius completely ignored me after that. He walked straight to the desk on his own, sat down directly across from Aurelia, and brazenly scrutinized her peerlessly beautiful face. To him, he had seen plenty of beautiful women. No matter how beautiful she was, it was just a face. As long as he possessed absolute power, what woman couldn't he obtain? "Aurelia, was the warning this young master gave you not enough? Do you want this little gigolo to end up exactly like Harper?" The smile suddenly vanished from Lucius's face. His eyes concealed a venomous, lethal threat. Every single word was designed to pierce the heart. He knew perfectly well that Aurelia could never possibly like him, so he resorted to the most extreme methods, making everyone around her suffer tragedies because of her, forcing her into absolute submission. "If you dare touch him," Aurelia stared right back at Lucius, her gaze terrifyingly calm, "I will erase your entire family from the face of this earth. You are welcome to test me." Lucius's smile froze completely on his face. He couldn't help but shoot a glance back at me, still happily playing my game. He never expected Aurelia to actually care this much about me, but the more she cared, the happier he became, because he had just found a much better target to destroy. "Keep a close eye on your little pet. Within 3 days, I'll turn him into a complete cripple." Lucius stood up with large strides and left the office. Watching Lucius's retreating back, only one word popped into my mind: arrogant. Arrogant without absolutely any bottom line. Sunlight spilled into the office through the floor-to-ceiling windows. A flash of silver light darted through the air. A specially customized silver needle embedded itself perfectly into Lucius's butt cheek. He didn't notice a single thing and continued walking out. The silver needles I custom ordered were only 1 millimeter thick, and this one was coated in a highly potent anesthetic liquid. Because the dosage was small, it wouldn't take effect immediately. It would activate in exactly 10 minutes. Lucius stepped into the elevator, pulled out his phone, and made a call. "Break a guy's both hands, 5 million per hand. I'll text you the info in a bit. Do it cleanly and quietly." After hanging up, he sneered coldly. "A doctor, huh? Once I break both your hands, I'd love to see how you plan to be a doctor. The elevator doors opened. His Ferrari sports car was already waiting at the building's entrance. He got into the car and slammed on the gas pedal, planning to find a place to unwind and relax. Unexpectedly, a Wuling minivan, a cheap boxy work van, overtook him from behind. Before Lucius could even get angry, the window of the Wuling rolled down and a middle finger was proudly thrust out. Then the van sped off, leaving a cloud of dust. A piece of garbage trash van dares to act arrogant with me? Furious, Lucius slammed his foot down on the accelerator. The sports car rapidly accelerated. The two cars chased each other through the city streets, terrifying the surrounding drivers into swerving out of the way. Finally, they entered an empty stretch of an expressway. Lucius sneered coldly and pressed the pedal to the metal. The Ferrari accelerated once again, but the Wuling van suddenly started slowing down and pulled over to the side. At this exact moment, Lucius felt a massive wave of drowsiness wash over him. After pulling over and parking his car, his head grew heavier and heavier, and then an overpowering, pungent smell of urea fertilizer completely engulfed him. 10 minutes later, I drove up slowly in the Rolls-Royce. Bart was waving frantically by the side of the road. "Over here! It's all taken care of!" The two of us worked together to hoist the urea fertilizer sack, which now contained a deeply unconscious Lucius, into the trunk of the Wuling van. I didn't forget to stab him with one more needle, just to guarantee he wouldn't wake up for at least half a day. Just as we slammed the trunk shut, a Lamborghini roared over from the end of the road. The owner of the car, Ashton, shouted with intense excitement, "Brother Caspian, we're beating someone up, right? Count me in," I laughed. "All right, get in the car. Today we're going to teach this punk a highly educational lesson on the dark, terrifying realities of society." Meanwhile, inside the CEO's office, Brutus looked at Aurelia, who was still calmly handling paperwork, and asked in confusion, Mr. Jiang went to go cause trouble for Lucius. Do we really not need to go help?" Aurelia's tone, however, was exceptionally firm. I believe in him. Her man was definitely not a useless piece of trash who needed someone to hold his hand for every little thing. After disposing of the Ferrari left on the side of the road, Bart, Ashton, and I drove to a highly secluded little grove in the suburbs. It was the exact same spot where Aurelia had dug a pit to bury me last time. Soon, blood-curdling screams of pure agony echoed through the mountain forest. I delivered kick after brutal kick directly onto the urea sack. "So it was you who made my wifey cry, huh? Weren't you acting all tough and arrogant earlier? Go ahead, act arrogant again. I dare you." Bart and Ashton were even more ruthless. Ashton unbuckled his leather belt and whipped it down relentlessly. "So satisfying!" Inside the urea sack, Lucius screamed at the top of his lungs. "You guys just wait. If I don't destroy you all, my last name isn't Liang." I let out a massive laugh. "You're still trying to act tough?" Bart spat violently on the ground. "You two step aside." Saying that, he took a running start, leaped high into the air, and crashed his entire body weight down heavily onto Lucius. Finally, Lucius let out a tragic wail that sounded like a slaughtered pig and passed out completely. Ashton calmed down a bit and asked me, "Brother Caspian, what do we do next? Should we just dump him here? He doesn't have any evidence anyway." I shook my head. "Doing that is letting him off way too easy. You guys tie him up and carry him. We're going to find some people to take the fall for us. We're going to make sure he can never flip the tables in the Magic City ever again." A highly knowing, wicked smile spread across Ashton's face. "Brother Caspian, you are incredibly evil, but I absolutely love it." Night fell. The decadent, money-drenched nightlife of the Magic City was just beginning to awaken. As a fully qualified premium playboy, Monty gathered his crew of rich, degenerate friends every single night to party at the club. Right now, inside a highly exclusive private club room, the female hostesses were twisting their sexists. The crowd of rich kids was entirely focused on the poker cards on the table. Come on, come on, come on! If you lose, don't try to back out." Monty was brimming with overconfidence. 1 million, big. If I lose, it's on me. If I win, I'm paying for everyone's drinks tonight." Right before the cards were revealed, the door was suddenly violently kicked open. Everyone jumped in terror and stared at the doorway. I walked in laughing cheerfully. "Sorry for the intrusion, but it's fine. I forgive you all." Seeing me, a massive wave of foreboding dread instantly crashed over Monty. Every single time he ran into me, terrible things happened. Unfortunately, all his lackeys were standing right there, so he couldn't exactly just sprint away. He could only ask, "Caspian, what do you want this time? Don't be so anxious. I'm here to apologize tonight." I quickly waved my hands and smiled brightly. "Brother Monty, I'm actually here to apologize for my extreme rudeness yesterday. My wife gave me a brutal lecture when I got home. So I specifically came here to formally apologize to you." "I'm so sorry!" Monty stared at me, completely and utterly baffled. This guy actually knows how to apologize? The lackeys surrounding them started whispering, looking at Monty with eyes full of absolute worship. "Look at how majestic and intimidating our young Master Wu is. Even this crazy guy came crawling back to apologize. Our young Master Wu is truly the ultimate boss." Hearing these praises, Monty felt like he was floating on a cloud. He coughed lightly twice and said, "Seeing as your attitude is quite sincere, we'll just forget about what happened yesterday. You can leave now." "I can't do that. Brother Monty, I actually prepared a special gift for you. You absolutely must accept it. Monty was just about to reject it when he suddenly saw Ashton and Bart drag a violently squirming urea fertilizer sack into the room. The ominous feeling in his gut skyrocketed. He instantly stood up, wanting to bolt, but Ashton grinned wickedly and untied the mouth of the sack. A severely beaten, bruised, and swollen Lucius tumbled out onto the floor, groaning in agonizing pain. I smiled brightly. Brother Monty, the guy you ordered me to kidnap, I've successfully delivered him to you. According to our agreement, you absolutely must protect me. Hearing this, Lucius immediately started cursing at the top of his lungs. Monty, so it was you pulling the strings behind the scenes? I'll remember this. You and I are absolutely irreconcilable. Monty roared in absolute fury. I curse your ancestors, Caspian. All right, don't be so angry. Haven't you always wanted to beat the crap out of him? Now your bros have delivered him right to your doorstep. We're pretty awesome friends, right? Ashton laughed as he threw an arm around Monty's shoulder, completely ignoring his complexion, which had turned the color of a rotten liver. Monty wanted to curse at the heavens. Screw you guys. It's glaringly obvious you guys beat the crap out of this idiot, and now you're dragging me down to take the fall with you. The beating stick at home was definitely not just a decoration. He absolutely did not want to be beaten to death by his old man. The worst part was, he couldn't even hide from this now. Even if he tried to explain, Lucius would never believe a single word. This was a blatant, unavoidable, open conspiracy. Thinking of this, he shot a venomous glare at me, still standing there, grinning happily. I swear, every time I meet you, nothing good ever happens. At this point, Lucius, who was tied up like a helpless maggot on the floor, started squirming and screamed, "Hurry up and let me go. Otherwise, when I get out of this, not a single one of you will escape. The mayor is my godfather. You guys better think very, very carefully about the consequences." If he hadn't said that, it might have been fine, but saying that instantly ignited the explosive fury in Monty's chest. He unleashed all his pent-up rage directly onto Lucius. He started beating the living daylights out of him. Since he was already forcefully dragged into this mess anyway, he might as well beat him. At least he'd get some immense satisfaction out of it. The rich kids surrounding them weren't stupid either. Taking advantage of the gap while Monty was throwing punches, they tried to slip away, but their escape route was instantly blocked by the two Wu family bodyguards. Where do you think you guys are going? Monty turned around, a highly predatory smile on his face, looking at his bras. He crooked his finger, pointing at Lucius, who was currently curled up on the floor like a dead dog. Every single person must hit him at least once. I'm graciously giving you all the opportunity to exact glorious revenge. Are you still not going to take it? Right now, Monty was flashing a smile straight out of hell. Everyone felt a terrifying chill run down their spines. Seeing that the timing was absolutely perfect, I chimed in. An opportunity like this won't come twice. If you have any good brothers or best sisters, call them all over here right now. Good things are meant to be shared with everyone. The rich kids looked incredibly conflicted, but very quickly phone calls started ringing out one after another. The private room briefly descended into utter chaos. Hey, bro, hurry over here. There are super hot girls. I'll only wait for you for 10 minutes. My dude! We've been bros for 10 years. Would I ever scam you? Hurry up and get over here. Young Master Wu is literally handing out gold bars. Ugh, why would I lie to you? There's actually a massive celebrity here. This chaos lasted for a full half hour before it finally died down. Once the phone calls were all made, everyone turned their gazes simultaneously toward Lucius. Since they were all going to be dragged down to hell anyway, they might as well enjoy themselves before the reckoning arrived. What are you guys trying to do? Stay away from me. Lucius was currently like a helpless, pathetic little sheep being stared down by a pack of ravenous wolves, weak and incredibly defenseless. The scene that followed was far too brutal to describe. Ashton, Monty, and I took advantage of the absolute chaos to slip out of the private room. Watching even more people who had been scammed into coming, we squatted in the hallway watching the glorious theater unfold. The club's waitstaff and managers wanted to check on the situation, but Monty shot them a terrifying glare, scaring them so badly they didn't dare interfere in business that wasn't theirs. Monty pulled out a pack of manhwa cigarettes. He handed one to Ashton. Ashton took it and lit it up. Domestic cigarettes are still the best. Foreign cigarettes just don't have the same kick. Monty hesitated for a second, then offered one to me. I shook my head and declined. I don't smoke anymore. If I go home reeking of smoke, the missus will absolutely murder me. Monty mocked me without holding back. You're totally whipped, being controlled by a woman like that. I let out a helpless sigh. Did you guys see the massive hole in the woods earlier today? That was the grave that crazy woman dug, fully preparing to bury me alive. Monty and Ashton were instantly struck with absolute horrified shock. The radiant, divine glow of the goddess in their hearts suddenly dimmed significantly. An hour later, the private room finally quieted down. By this time, the number of participants had ballooned to over 30 people. Every single one of them was a wealthy scion of the Magic City. Compared to the utter chaos inside the room, Lucius was lying unconscious on the floor. His body was covered in horrifying, gruesome, superficial wounds. Monty walked toward me, leading a waitress. Here, this is the person you requested. The waitress looked to be in her early 20s. Her heart was filled with terror, but she didn't dare ask any questions. I placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder and comforted her. Don't be afraid. As long as you do exactly what I tell you, your broken family's circumstances will experience a world-shaking transformation. The next day, inside the mayor's office of the Magic City, upon learning that his son had been beaten so badly he was hospitalized, Lorenzo arrived at the city government building first thing in the morning to file a furious complaint. Brother Lexington, you absolutely must seek justice for my little Lucius. He's usually so obedient and well-behaved, and yet he was beaten straight into the hospital. They are blatantly disrespecting you as his godfather. They must be severely punished. Mayor Lexington wearily rubbed his temples. A deep anger rolled in the depths of his eyes. Lucius was his godson. Beating him was equivalent to slapping the mayor's own face. It was utter, unbridled arrogance. Lexington turned his head toward his secretary and ordered strictly, "Go investigate this immediately. Within 2 hours, I want every single person involved in this incident inside my office." Seeing the mayor's dark expression, the secretary hurriedly scrambled out of the office. In his heart, Lexington wasn't actually heartbroken because Lucius was beaten. After all, a godson was just a meaningless title. Back in the day, Lorenzo had gotten him blackout drunk and forced him to acknowledge the relationship. But the real issue was, this incident directly challenged his absolute authority as mayor. They had to be severely punished, especially since the ringleaders were the sons of the Wu and Gao families. If he didn't teach them a brutal lesson now, who would ever respect his authority in the future? Lorenzo felt secretly triumphant. Even though he was just a live-in son-in-law in the Liang family of the capital, he was not someone to be trifled with. This was the perfect opportunity to establish his dominance. Let's see who dares to mess with him after this. The secretary returned very quickly. He had notified the relevant members of the Wu and Gao familiesto come to the city government immediately. Soon, Ashton was led into the office by his mother. Lorenzo immediately stood up and roared furiously, "Victoria, your son beat my son into that state. You must give me a satisfactory explanation today." Victoria, absolutely refusing to back down, sneered coldly, "Don't be so impatient. You can save that speech for a bit later. Otherwise, you're going to have to repeat yourself every single time a new person walks in. You won't have the energy for it." Lorenzo was confused. As time ticked by, dozens of ultra-luxury cars drove into the city government compound. There weren't even enough parking spaces. They had to just park randomly along the street, attracting a massive crowd of curious onlookers. Inside the mayor's office, Lexington looked at the increasingly massive crowd of people, his eyes bulging wide. "Why did all of you come?" The chairman of the Water Curtain Group, the deputy chief of police, the director of the Environmental Protection Bureau. Lorenzo was also completely dumbfounded. He had absolutely no idea what was going on. Wasn't this just a brawl started by Monty and a few rich kids? Why on earth did so many massive heavyweights show up? When the figures of Aurelia and Sterling appeared, Lexington said angrily, "What are you doing here? Don't tell me your daughter participated in the beating too." Aurelia replied with absolute calmness, "My man threw punches. He made a mistake, and as his wife, I failed to discipline him properly. A mistake is a mistake. Name your price." Many people cheerfully echoed her sentiment, staring at Lorenzo with eyes full of utter mockery. This father-son duo was incredibly despised in the Magic City. The younger one was an arrogant, domineering punk. The older one abused his connections to maliciously steal resources. Now was the perfect opportunity to exact some sweet revenge. Suddenly, a hulking figure strode into the room. His booming voice overpowered the entire crowd. Make way, make way! Are you all just standing around waiting for dinner?" Seeing Uncle Gideon, Mayor Lexington's eyes practically popped out of his skull. He lost control of his emotions and roared, "You old brute! What the hell are you doing here? Don't tell me you're involved in this too." Uncle Gideon curled his lip. "I'm here for my nephew. Furthermore, I heard that this Liang kid was trying to force a decent girl into prostitution, triggering massive public outrage." Lorenzo panicked. "Absolute nonsense. How could my son possibly try to force a girl into prostitution?" Ashton whipped out his phone and pulled up a photo. "I took a picture. If you don't believe me, I can call the person here right now to confront you face to face." Yeah, I took pictures too," Monty eagerly chimed in, pulling out his own phone. His heart was blooming with absolute joy. He never expected Caspian's mind to be this diabolically brilliant. They beat the crap out of someone, and actually managed to twist it into a heroic act of righteous intervention. Who knows, they might even get awarded a heroic citizen pennant for this. Seeing the photos of his son pressing himself onto a waitress, Lorenzo instantly lost all his arguments. He was definitely set up in a trap, but he was completely powerless to prove his innocence. Mayor Lexington rubbed his temples, sighing helplessly. Since today's incident was all just a big misunderstanding, then let's just leave it at that. "Wait!" A shout came from outside. Everyone turned to look at the source of the voice. I, sporting a face completely bruised and swollen, was lying flat on a stretcher, being carried into the room by Bart and a doctor. Seeing me covered in horrifying injuries, everyone gasped in awe and secretly gave me a massive thumbs up. What an absolute madman, he actually beat himself up this badly. Uncle Gideon seized the opportunity, folded his arms, and let out a cold snort. Lorenzo, you absolute bastard. My nephew is an incredibly honest and simple-minded kid. To stop that beastly animal from your family, he was actually beaten into this state. You absolutely must give me a satisfactory explanation today. Cold sweat instantly started pouring down Lorenzo's forehead. He was completely finished. How did he, the original plaintiff, suddenly become the defendant? Uncle Gideon calling me honest and simple-minded. Even Ashton and Monty couldn't help but twitch their mouths. To be brutally honest, if this guy was considered honest, then there wasn't a single deceitful, scheming person left on planet Earth. Lorenzo furrowed his brows deeply. He simply couldn't comprehend how the situation had mutated into this. The plaintiff became the defendant, and there were so many accusers. Things absolutely could not escalate to the point of no return. If it truly did, he would become the absolute target of public execution. Seeing everyone staring at him with burning, intense gazes, Lorenzo gritted his teeth and forced himself to say, when it comes down to it, this is all just a one-sided story from your side. Who knows if you didn't force my Lucius to take those photos? We must wait until he wakes up to clarify the truth. Even though he tried to explain it this way, even he himself felt it was an incredibly weak argument. After all, he knew exactly what kind of degenerate scum his own son was. But Aurelia had absolutely zero intention of letting him off the hook easily. She let out a cold snort. Absolutely not. You beat my husband into this state. You must give me a definitive result right here, right now. If I am falsely accusing him, I will personally bear all the legal consequences. Uncle Gideon folded his arms and chimed in with a cold snort. And me, these words seemed to flip a massive switch. Everyone else immediately started echoing their agreement. Every single one of them was brimming with absolute confidence, as if the truth of the matter was exactly as Uncle Gideon had described. Lorenzo stammered and stumbled backward 2 steps. The words were stuck in his throat, unable to come out. He knew it. His son was completely, utterly screwed today. Enough! Everyone, quiet down! Suddenly, Mayor Lexington slammed his hand heavily onto the desk twice. His face was filled with extreme dissatisfaction. Every single one of you manages hundreds of employees under your command. Bickering and shouting in here like a bunch of children. What kind of behavior is this? Do you think my office is a wet market? I will make my own final ruling on this matter. For now, we will process this as Lucius committing intentional assault, 3 years in prison, and compensate the 2 victims $20 million. Director Gu, what do you think? Although Lexington was the mayor, he still needed the incoming police chief, Uncle Gideon, to give the final nod. Before Uncle Gideon could even respond, I immediately started crying and wailing in extreme grievance. I got beaten this badly, and I only get $10 million, Mr. Mayor. The clinic I run pulls in at least $2 million in pure profit every single day. Now that I'm beaten like this, I can't treat patients at all. I'll have to recover for at least several months. Who's going to compensate me for my massive financial losses? I demand a minimum of $100 million. Hearing this, even Sterling, Aurelia's dad, clicked his tongue in amazement. $100 million? This kid really has the guts to ask for the stars, but having guts like that, he likes it. Lorenzo, however, was completely dumbfounded. $100 million? Why the hell don't you just go rob a bank? You run a garbage little clinic, and it makes $2 million a day. You're clearly just using this opportunity to extort me. Bart happily pulled out the clinic's official bank transaction records. Mr. Mayor, please take a look. These are the actual performance records of our Century Clinic, without Dr. Jiang. The clinic literally cannot operate normally. These cash flows are 100% authentic. You are more than welcome to send people to audit them. These records were indeed completely real. I had anticipated this exact scenario long ago, so yesterday afternoon, I specifically arranged for people to artificially inflate the performance numbers. I reimbursed every single penny out of my own pocket. Seeing this, Aurelia couldn't help but curl her lip. This stinky man truly never forgets to rake in secret stash money, no matter the situation. But it doesn't matter. In the end, all this cash will eventually be mine anyway. Mayor Lexington didn't even bother looking at the records. He obviously knew that since they dared to present these records, they definitely weren't afraid of an audit. He narrowed his eyes slightly at me, lying flat on the stretcher. Suddenly, he stood up and said, I actually served as a doctor for 2 years in the past. Why don't I personally give you a physical examination, and then we can negotiate the compensation amount based on your actual, specific condition. The moment those words dropped, Aurelia and Uncle Gideon's faces instantly changed color. Whether the injuries were real or fake, they knew perfectly well in their hearts. We're completely finished. Seeing Mayor Lexington preparing to personally examine me, Uncle Gideon and the others felt their hearts leap straight into their throats. If I was publicly exposed as a fraud right now, it would become the most astronomically massive joke in history. However, Lexington merely performed a simple check of the superficial wounds on my face. Finding nothing unusual, he frowned, grabbed my wrist, and began to carefully check my pulse. A weak external appearance can be faked. Superficial wounds can also be temporarily manufactured, but a person's pulse absolutely cannot lie. Lexington placed 2 fingers on my wrist and felt it for a moment. His frown grew deeper and deeper. After a long while, he withdrew his hand and sighed helplessly. He is indeed severely injured. Let's do this then. 100 million is not realistic. Compensation will be 50 million. Bart was experiencing a state of absolute, ecstatic frenzy internally. They originally just wanted to extort 30 million. Who would have expected to get an extra 20 million on top of that? Old Jiang taking that beating was totally worth it. Lorenzo was naturally incredibly unwilling. 50 million was equivalent to half of his entire liquid capital. It would cause a massive detrimental impact on his company's operations. He was just about to protest when he was hit with a lethally vicious glare from Lexington. He had no choice but to forcefully swallow his words. Ashton's mother, Victoria, clapped her hands and smiled. Since the matter has been discussed clearly, then let's leave it at that. Everyone is quite busy. I still have to head back to the company to handle official business. Her proposal was immediately echoed by everyone else. But they definitely didn't think this was a waste of time. After all, this theatrical drama was incredibly spectacular. Everyone loves a good show. Thus, while Lucius was still unconscious in a coma, his fate was completely sealed. The actual truth of the matter was no longer important. Lexington also didn't want to needlessly draw fire upon himself. After all, these people were all massive taxpayers in the city. It absolutely wasn't worth ruining relationships with them over a cheap, nominal godson. After the matter was resolved, the crowd didn't linger. They came quickly and left just as quickly. Soon, only Lorenzo and Mayor Lexington were left in the office. After the very last person walked out the door, Lorenzo finally couldn't hold it in anymore and asked, "Brother Lexington, why did you stop me earlier? That was a full 50 million, even if it was exactly as they claimed. There was absolutely no need to compensate them that much, right?" Lexington scolded him with intense annoyance. "You absolute idiot! Couldn't you see that the primary fault for this entire incident lies entirely on you and your son? I told you guys to keep a low profile normally, but you refused to listen. Otherwise, why wouldn't there be a single person willing to speak up for you? Let this matter end here. Just consider the money as paying for a valuable lesson. Your son is still young. Being locked up for 3 years is actually a good thing. It's the perfect opportunity to grind down his arrogant temper. It will benefit his future." Although Lorenzo was deeply unwilling in his heart, he could only accept it. After all, this was the Magic City, not the capital. He couldn't act completely recklessly here. Outside the city government building, Uncle Gideon happily poked the wound on my face. "You're pretty good, kid. These fake wounds look incredibly realistic. You even managed to fool Mayor Lexington." I bared my teeth in pain and glared at him angrily. "What do you mean fake? These are real injuries. I deliberately threw myself onto the ground this morning. Otherwise, how could I deceive people? The mayor isn't blind, you know. The external injuries were genuinely from a fall, but they were just superficial flesh wounds, not serious at all. My pulse was weak because I had ingested some special herbs that caused my bodily functions to become sluggish, slowing my heart rate down, creating the flawless illusion of severe internal injuries. I originally prepared this to guard against a thorough hospital examination. I never expected the mayor to actually know how to check a pulse. It actually saved me a ton of trouble. Right at that moment, Aurelia's hand stealthily crept up to my waist and executed a vicious, brutal twist. The pain made the corner of my mouth twitch violently. I looked at the prime culprit and complained in dissatisfaction. "What are you doing? I'm a literal medical patient right now." Aurelia folded her arms and said coldly, "Who told you to randomly self-harm? Your body belongs to me, without my explicit permission. Who told you to act on your own and do this to yourself? You deserve it!" Looking at the injuries on her stinky man's body, her heart was actually aching intensely. Many people drove away immediately after leaving the mayor's office. After all, they were genuinely very busy. It wasn't just an excuse. When Ashton walked past me, he gave me a massive thumbs up. His face was full of absolute awe and admiration. "You are a true, ruthless madman. I bow down to you." He had wanted to destroy that bastard Lucius for ages, but he had absolutely no idea how to pull it off. He wanted to get revenge while also completely clearing his own name. He never expected me to proactively jump into the mess, drag so many massive heavyweights into the fray, beat the guy to a pulp without facing any consequences, send Lucius to prison for 3 years, and walk away with 50 million in compensation. One word, absolute brilliance. 12 p.m. noon, Magic City First People's Hospital. The heavily bruised and battered Lucius finally woke up after being unconscious for over half a day. Recalling the horrific abuse he suffered last night, his body began to tremble uncontrollably. Whether it was from sheer rage or sheer terror, it was hard to tell. His eyes burned like hellfire. He gritted his teeth and spat, "Caspian, Monty, Ashton, and that fat bastard, how dare you treat me like this? I will make absolutely sure every single one of you rots in prison, and all those people who hit me, not a single one of you will escape." At this moment, Butler Quincy walked into the hospital room holding a water kettle. Lucius's spirits instantly lifted. Ignoring the piercing, agonizing pain racking his body, he asked with intense anticipation, "How is it, Uncle Quincy? Are those 3 bastards completely finished? How many years were they sentenced to?" Butler Quincy let out a faint, tragic sigh. 3 years! Only 3 years! Lucius was deeply dissatisfied. He originally wanted Caspian to rot in prison for the rest of his life. Although he knew that wasn't entirely realistic, he still clicked his tongue in annoyance. Whatever, 3 years is 3 years. This is the price for provoking me. Butler Quincy couldn't bear to break the news, but he had to remind him, young master, the person who was sentenced is you. You are the one going to prison for 3 years, and you also have to pay 60 million in compensation. Lucius was completely and utterly paralyzed with shock. Nani? What? He was frozen solid. What kind of twisted upside-down world is this? I was the one who got beaten to a pulp, and the end result is that I have to pay compensation, and I have to go squat in prison. What on earth actually happened while I was unconscious? Meanwhile, back in the city government building, after quickly sending off Lorenzo, Lexington slumped back wearily into his chair. If Lorenzo hadn't been so cooperative over the past 2 years, and hadn't donated with such generous sincerity, he really wouldn't have bothered to manage this absolute cluster mess. It seems in the future, he still needs to keep some distance from the Liang family. Lexington pondered internally. If he couldn't see exactly who orchestrated this entire brilliant setup, his many years of being mayor would have been completely in vain. It was glaringly obvious this was a deeply personal feud between the younger generation. The Wu family's young master Monty was far too arrogant and haughty. He definitely didn't have the brains to come up with such delightfully wicked tactics. Victoria's son had just returned from overseas, so the ultimate, most massive suspicion naturally fell right onto the most heavily injured person. Lucius had just gone to the Century Tower yesterday. By noon, he vanished without a trace. When he reappeared, he was already in the hospital. Just as Lexington was deep in thought, a knock on the door interrupted his train of logic. He impatiently told the person to come in. The result was Bart, who had just left not too long ago, waltzing back in. His face was plastered with a cheerful, beaming smile, holding a bright red silk pennant in his hands. Bart said, "Mayor Lexington, this time you upheld absolute justice for our Dr. Jiang. This is a pennant he specifically asked me to deliver to you as a token of gratitude. Please, you absolutely must accept it. I also heard that you enjoy drinking tea. It just so happens I have 2 packets of top-tier premium tea leaves right here." Lexington couldn't really refuse. He had no choice but to stand up. But the moment he touched the pennant, he instantly realized something was uniquely different about it. However, his expression didn't change in the slightest as he accepted it. He pondered for a second, then said, "You are very thoughtful. Go back and tell Dr. Jiang I have fully received his gratitude. If he encounters any trouble in the future, tell him not to hesitate to come find me. As the mayor, solving problems for the citizens is my absolute duty." The two exchanged a highly knowing smile. Then Bart turned and left, thoughtfully closing the door securely behind him. Lexington ripped open the packaging of the tea leaves on his desk. Upon seeing the hidden gift tucked inside, his face broke out into a massive, highly satisfied smile. He thought internally, this kid is infinitely smarter and more sensible than anyone in the Liang family. Outside the office, Aurelia was leaning against the wall with her arms folded, waiting quietly. Seeing Bart walk out, she asked softly, "Did he accept it?" Bart nodded. "Yep, right now. He's probably sitting in there smiling so hard his face hurts." Aurelia nodded and turned to leave. In her heart, she felt a profound sense of helplessness toward me. In the end, she still had to be the one to wipe my butt and clean up the mess for this incident. All the massive figures who showed up today definitely required some heavy greasing of the wheels. Upon returning home, Mother-in-law Serenity felt incredibly heartbroken as she applied medicinal powder to my wounds. Her movements were painstakingly gentle and careful. Her mouth was constantly nagging. "You child, honest, why did you absolutely have to do this to yourself? Couldn't you have just found a random proxy to do it?" I laughed and said, "If I used someone else, it might not have carried enough dramatic weight. It was best if I did it personally." Serenity obviously understood the logic behind it. She just felt incredibly bad for me. Aurelia unwrapped a piece of candy and shoved it directly into my mouth. "A reward for you. I was getting revenge for you, and my reward is just one single piece of candy," Aurelia said coldly. "Who told you to injure yourself? Your merits and faults cancel each other out perfectly. Getting one piece of candy is already pretty good." Sterling stood to the side watching us. He gave me a side eye and said, "That guy Lorenzo isn't that easy to fool. Aurelia, take Caspian to the old estate and stay there for a while. Wait until his injuries have healed a bit before coming back. I'll handle things on the company's end." Right now, the impression I gave Lorenzo was that of someone critically, heavily injured, but Lucius would definitely wake up and expose the actual truth. If Lorenzo found concrete evidence, even just capturing a few photographs of me perfectly fine, Lucius's 3-year prison sentence would instantly be thrown into jeopardy. Aurelia nodded. It didn't matter anyway. As long as she was with me, it didn't matter where she went. She also hadn't been back to the old estate in a very long time. That place held countless precious memories. I nodded in agreement. "Let's go then." Early the next morning After handing over all the clinic's operational affairs, Aurelia and I got into the car together. The Jiang family's old estate was actually located within the Magic City limits, but it wasn't in the urban district. It was situated deep in the remote mountains. I had been there when I was a kid. That was the exact place where Aurelia and I first met. For this trip to the old estate, we only brought Brutus with us. Inside the car, I looked at the notification on my phone confirming the 50 million deposit. I was grinning so hard I couldn't close my mouth. But the very next second, another text message popped up. 50,000 transferred out. Great. My private stash was instantly gone again. I shot a side eye at Aurelia, who was currently giggling next to me. I directly pulled her into my embrace. Since she took my money, I absolutely have to get some sweet compensation in return. 2.5 hours later, the scenery outside the car window transitioned from towering skyscrapers to lush, breathtaking mountains and clear waters. The natural beauty was incredibly pleasing to the eyes. The Zhang family's 3-story old estate stood majestically halfway up the mountain. The front and back courtyard spanned about 200 square meters. It looked incredibly tranquil and peaceful. I pointed at a cluster of bushes not too far away, suddenly remembering something. Back then, when you ran away from home, our very first meeting was right over there. You were squatting in the bushes crying your absolute eyes out. Before I could even finish my sentence, Aurelia viciously stomped right on the tip of my foot. She let out a cold snort. Hurry up and completely delete that memory from your brain immediately! Brutus stood to the side, completely helpless. Miss, I'll be taking my leave now. I will come back to pick you up in exactly half a month. Please, you absolutely must be careful and stay safe. Aurelia waved him off with intense, impatient eagerness. Go, go, go! In her heart, she was secretly thrilled. I finally get to have some uninterrupted alone time.